program. Oh, there it is. There you go.
And we're live?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Right.
Dude, we're on the internet.
We're live.
Yeah, we're live. Neat.
You're legit on the internet.
Cool. And so we're definitely not gonna have video for you, Gordo. Is that what I'm to understand?
That's fine.
I mean, you like to be mysterious, but I feel like you've developed your own fan base after after months of doing this.
Yes. Actually, I think it's been about a year now.
Has it been a year that you've been doing this with us?
It's been about 5 years.
It took us 5 years to do 96 episodes.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode number 96 of the motherfucking podcast. This is, of course, the official podcast of the International Power Rock Combo, motherfucking Ruckus, from Denver and Chicago, respectively. I'm Aaron Howell.
I'm Gordo.
Gordo, it's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you. There was a hell of a bit of traffic getting up here today. Just coming in a little bit later up by Sloan's Lake, there was an accident.
Are we at that point?
You guys ever seen anyone impaled before?
You saw somebody impaled?
No, I haven't either. But there was a bad accident up by Sloan's Lake, and it was just kind of a fender bender. It was nothing. It was no big deal.
Right. I thought I saw somebody impaled once. Like when I was a teenager, somebody crashed into the Blockbuster Video over by my house. By the way, for the younger audience, Blockbuster Video was a place that you could go and rent movies on these things called cassette tapes, or later DVDs, and you could put them in a machine at home, and you didn't need to stream them.
Yeah, they were big.
Yeah, they were big ones.
But they also had the Betamax.
Yeah, I see. Betamax was before my time. I did watch Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman on Betamax in school once, but that was like the only time I ever watched anything on Betamax.
So if you were lucky enough to have Betamax, they always had more of selection of Betamax in the store because not everyone had Betamax.
Really?
Everyone had VHS. So chances on getting the movie you wanted, the shop maybe had 10 copies of Big.
Right.
3 copies of Big on Beta.
It's like it's like Blu-ray. Like at the end of DVD, you could go in, at the end of Blockbuster, you could go in and you could get Blu-rays more accessibly than you could get.
Right.
DVDs.
That was the deal with Betamax. We didn't have Betamax, but the movie you wanted was always there,
Beta.
But it was in Betamax. VHS was gone.
Dude, is there any way to make it work?
And then some of the shops
ago, like when I first started doing videos and video editing in college, it was
on Betamax?
Stacks of videotape. No, like VHS, but it was just stacks and stacks, and just like, I think that shot is on number 12.
I think I remember that.
Yeah.
I went to what do you call it? The it wasn't CICS. What was the school over on like you could leave school and go over to that other school that was on Federal over by the Safeway, and they had like a film program there, like it was an extracurricular thing, and really I just did it so I could smoke pot and fuck off. But we did, like, I think all the video editing was done on VHS there too. Jerry actually was really good at editing with just 2 VCRs.
Oh wow, I bet he was.
Yeah, like he would have 2 VCRs side by side and would do like live edits by just hitting pause and like play and start. So like you'd watch home movies and they'd have like every cut would have that like little burst of static in between. And I don't know, I thought it was kind of cool that was, he did like total caveman analog.
That's OG mixtape.
That is
right
OG
there.
mixtape.
That is OG mixtape.
But if your parents were really rich, you had a laser disc player.
So my dad had a...
And it always starts with my dad whenever you mention laser disc players, because my dad too. Yeah.
My dad had a copy of Jurassic Park on Laserdisc for years, and we never got a Laserdisc player. He just he was going to get one, and then he was like, I'm going to get on top of it. I'm going to make sure I get Jurassic Park before anyone else can. So the second Jurassic Park came out on Laserdisc, my dad went out and bought it, and it just sat on a shelf in our basement for seriously 20 years.
Does he still have it?
He might. He might still have it somewhere.
You never took the discs to somebody else's house to watch?
No, it just sat there in the shrink wrap because it got replaced by DVD eventually.
Sure.
But my dad thought...
Well, I think it even went out kind of went out before DVD even came around.
Right.
I mean, it was either too expensive or too big.
It's impractical.
Yeah, you know.
Like, people aren't going to keep movies like they keep LPs.
And the video store had such a small selection
nothing.
of laser discs.
Yeah, nothing whatsoever. I worked at Blockbuster Video for a minute. Like, probably literally a minute. Maybe a week. And then I called in. I wanted to go to a party or something, so I called in and said that my grandma died, and then I never went back again.
That old excuse.
Yeah, and both my grandmas are alive and well to this day. Like,
right.
Yeah, and yeah.
They know better, especially at Blockbuster.
No, they're like, nobody wants to work here.
That's a slacker crew.
We get it. One of the best things I ever saw done with a VHS cassette was a guy I went to school with. He would keep his stash of blunts in a hollowed out VHS cassette tape.
Very smart.
Yeah, so he would take the spools out, but then he would I guess he would like black out the what do you call it? The window.
The window, right.
Yeah. And then just fill it with blunts and like pop it open, and he'd sell you a blunt for $5 a piece. And we'd just, we got to find Tommy. Tommy, can I buy a couple blunts from you? And he'd be like, hell yeah, man.
Go into his room and he...
Oh, yeah.
You know where I hid my drugs?
Where?
You know, in the record player, the disc washer? The wood handle, velvet.
Damn,
thing.
that is a good idea.
So inside the dishwasher, inside the box for the disc washer, there is the little liquid you squirt on the vinyl.
Right.
It kind of stores inside that brush.
You kept it filled with LSD.
Okay. So you'd take the liquid out, and you could put your drugs in there, but there was this little brush that came with it that kind of held the liquid in place inside that disc washer.
Right.
And that would kind of hold your stash in place. You put it back in the box, sits right up on your record player.
Yeah, no one's going to look there.
Yeah, in plain sight.
You know what?
I did that for 20 years.
You put your weed in there.
My dad, being a cop and all, you would think that I would have to like really get inventive with my drug hiding spots. But like, unless I had something sitting on the windowsill, my dad had no idea.
Was he didn't want to know?
Yeah. Was it?
No.
Like, cop's son, no way he's going to do this, or he's going to do this. I don't want to know.
There are miles between a police officer and a detective. A police officer is like trained to like recognize the smell of pot, or trained to like recognize, like, if a case of cocaine spilled open in front of my dad, I think he might know what it was. But like at that point, like I was just like playing with pipe fittings, and I like made a pipe that I never used, and I like kept it out on the windowsill, and my dad, thought he had busted me cold with what my dad called a hash pipe. Like, he literally called it a hash pipe.
Of course he did, right.
Yeah. And
dope pipe. That's where you put your dope.
He's like, I found your hash pipe on the windowsill, and it's like, my hash pipe? I've never smelled.
Know where to get hash.
Yeah, right? Yeah. What is this? What is this, the UK in 1968? Like, right. I have no idea how, but as far as like having like a bong or something like that, I just would keep it under my bed. Or the most I did was I would take and hide stuff in the hole in the wall where the master water shutoff was.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? You could stash stuff down there, like tape it against the wall, like duct tape or whatever. But I also I never had money for drugs, and I never really had money for booze, so I didn't really have anything to keep in the house in the first place.
Well, we had cigarettes.
Right.
Porno mags.
Yeah.
Things like that. We had these rafters in the basement, and I was smart, and I put them above the rafters.
Oh, that's a good place.
But then you forget which rafter, and
there's lots of good
up.
places in the basement.
Basement's a good spot. I mean, maybe my parents knew. They just never went down there.
Yeah.
Basements are for doing bad things.
I got caught doing dumb stuff. Like, I got caught doing a lot of stuff, but I think what I got caught for was the tip of the iceberg. And then there was just this whole world of stuff below the surface that I never got caught.
So wait, why don't you introduce the guest, and then I have a question about escape routes.
Oh yes, the guest.
Oh yeah.
Let's introduce the guest. Please welcome to the show an amazing musician, one of the owners of the Oriental Theater. I would say the face of the Oriental Theater for sure. From a branding standpoint, definitely the pasty face of the Oriental Theater. The hired gun bass player, bass master general, in fact.
Thank you.
Plays with our side project, White Fudge. Plays for the Samples. You're also the tour manager for the Samples, correct? And then has played for a bunch of different bands, including played for Doug Kershaw at one point.
Right, still do.
Do you still play for Doug Kershaw?
Playing in Canada in June.
That's really fucking cool, man.
Yeah, really cool.
And then aside from that, one of my favorite humans just in life in general.
Thanks,
and
man.
That's a true thing, dude. Like, you're one of my favorite people out there.
Thanks,
and I speak very highly of you. Please welcome my good friend and colleague and bandmate and a real sweetheart of a guy. Please welcome Andy Bercaw to the show. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm sorry it took so long.
No, I'm glad you're here, man. It took.
You've been asking me for a long time.
Well,
You arrived at a good moment, though.
Yeah, you did.
Arrived at the best moment we've had so far.
Because we've only started successfully live streaming the shows pretty recently. And you came onto the show when we've actually started. We've developed something of a following. I mean, we don't have thousands of subscribers or thousands of viewers or anything, but we're getting to the point where people are watching and listening to the show with fairly decent regularity and consistency. So you came at a good time.
Well, I think people are starting to understand podcasts a little bit more.
Right.
And get excited about them.
Right. And it's the form has definitely spread a great deal within just the last couple of years. I mean, it's been around for a long time. Podcasts have been around for probably 10, 15 years now.
Sure.
15 years generously. Actually, maybe even longer than that. I wonder, I remember hearing about podcasts going on when I was probably 23 or something like that. So maybe 15 years.
Yeah, I think there were some radio shows that put episodes on the internet,
right,
in the mid-aughts in there.
That's what I'd heard of. Things like This American Life,
right,
things like that. But I hadn't heard of podcasts until about 5 years ago.
It's the gateway drug.
It's the gateway.
Yeah, This American Life.
Well,
it's a great one too.
Yeah, it's awesome. Still good.
I always just liked playing radio show, and this is I just think it's amazing that we live in a time where I can have my own radio show. I can have my own TV show, with my friends, which is like coming full circle to what me and Logan and his brother Marshall used to do as kids, just sitting at home and making music videos and making radio shows and stuff like that. And now you can do it and actually get it to other people with fairly minimal effort, despite what our setup today.
Speaking of kids, I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier. Who had what were your escape routes when you were sneaking out of the house when you were a kid?
So my dad installed. So I got my own room at one point. My dad.
In the basement?
In the basement. I got my own room in the basement. Oh, it was so cool.
Yeah,
that's just asking for trouble.
Yeah, that's a lucky break right there.
I didn't get a door, though, for quite some time. In fact, my dad got me a door for my birthday.
It just hadn't been framed out, or it was by design?
Well, no, they just hadn't installed the door. And then after that, I had a door without a knob on it for a while. And really, it came from the fact that my dad is not very handy at all. My dad cut all the power to the house once, trying to wire in a light switch. He had a service person come over to the house to fix something with the central air, and the service person was the guy was just well, Mr. Howell, actually, it's something really easy. You don't have to pay me to come out and do a service call. It's just a screw and a screwdriver, and you can do this yourself. And my dad told the guy, he was sir, if I try to do that, there will be a smoking crater where my house once stood. It's I will gladly pay for the service call.
That's smart.
So my dad just wasn't very handy. So it just took him a long time to get around to installing the door, and then even longer to get around to installing the doorknob. And I was lazy and on drugs, so I didn't do it myself either. But yeah, he did have installed a security window that basically, if a fire broke out, you could pull down on a couple of chains and sneak out that way. And, he warned me when he put it in. He's if you try and sneak out of this, I'll slam your nuts in it, And I snuck out through it nervously a couple of times, and then I started to realize that my parents are hard of hearing and can sleep through a bus crash. So by the time I was 17...
Were they 2 stories up, or was it a...
1 story up.
1 story up, okay.
Yeah. And so instead of going through the window at a certain point, I just started going out the front door. Like, I would wait till they went to sleep, and then I would go out the front door. And there was like... My mom, bless her heart, so wanted to believe that I was never up to no good.
Yeah, you'd never, yeah.
Right. So, you know, when I got arrested and she got a call from the police saying that they had her son and they were taking him to jail, her response was, "Oh, no, not my son. He's downstairs asleep in bed."
Oh, so this was upon sneaking out. You got arrested.
Oh, yeah.
You blew it.
Yeah, I blew it. But, I mean, even after that, you know, they seriously, I could have fallen down the stairs. I could have tumbled down the stairs with a serial murderer with an orchestra playing the soundtrack to the battle between me and the serial murderer, and my parents would have slept through the whole thing.
So you continued to sneak out after that?
Oh, yeah. I snuck out up until pretty much I turned 18, and the day I turned 18, I moved out of the house.
Okay.
Okay, so what was your escape route?
Well, also basement, but I lived on the 2-story house, so I lived on the 2nd story.
Ooh, la-di-da.
Very fancy. Yeah, we were walking in high cotton.
Can you guys let Ethan in so he can charge that camera up there?
Oh, yeah. Is it locked?
Yeah, I think it's locked.
Hey guys. Is it really locked?
Professional production we're doing here.
Yeah, it is.
Well, anyhow.
Yeah.
So I had to go downstairs, the main floor, to walk by my parents' bedroom, because their bedroom was by the top of the stairs, but down a nice, quiet, carpeted stair, through the kitchen, but down the creaky basement stairs. It was an unfinished basement. Not a big deal.
Right.
And then I'd have to get up on the tool bench to get up through the small, tiny little window up top. And we just, I'd crank it open and slide on out.
So you actually had to sneak out.
Yeah, I had to. Yeah, it was really sneaky.
Which brings me to another thing. Didn't you have to go to military school at one point?
I did. I went to military school for high school.
Is that because you got caught sneaking out?
That might have been part of it.
Yeah. So you were sneaking out in middle school then?
I was pretty young.
I was too afraid to sneak out in middle school.
But we weren't doing anything.
Yeah.
We weren't drinking. Maybe we were smoking cigarettes. We were meeting up and hanging around the neighborhood.
Right.
We didn't go anywhere fun. No one had a car to pick us up.
Right.
I don't know what we were doing.
That's how it started for me,
screwing around.
Dude, I never would have had the balls to sneak out. I was too scared of getting caught. I was almost an adult the first time I snuck out. I remember sneaking out at 16 and just being terrified that I was going to
learned it from my big brother.
Oh, and that's how I was the big brother.
How I learned the window trick was I remember sneaking beer out to him from the basement fridge through that window. And then I realized I can get out this window. And I did it a number of times until one day or one night. I came home and I come in the window and I look up the stairs and I see through the under the crack of the door the kitchen light on. And I was like, oh, I'm screwed. I'm caught. I'm busted. So I just went to my hangout area in the basement, sat on the couch.
And waited.
And I eventually just gave up and I walked upstairs. And of course, my mom is sitting at the kitchen table with my stepdad and
biding her time.
And I don't remember what happened from there. They were not happy. And I don't know what kind of trouble I got in, but I, did the walk of shame up those stairs and walk of shame to my bedroom, and I was pretty bummed out. They were upset.
Right.
What were you doing? And you tell them nothing, they're not going to believe you.
Right,
you're doing nothing. If you're sneaking out the window at 1 a.m,
why would you be sneaking out if you're not doing anything? Right.
But God honest, we weren't doing anything.
Yeah,
we were
literally
at the park.
Yeah, I snuck out a lot to do nothing. I did for a long time. Didn't do anything but hang out at the park. That was it.
I was always doing something when I was sneaking out.
Yeah, and you could do that during the day, but that's just not as fun.
Right.
No, there's nothing going on at the park in the daytime. No.
And it's something to be said about, just this is that piece of freedom, you just gave yourself that freedom. Feels good.
Did you ever drink with a fake ID?
I did drink with a fake ID.
Where did you drink with your fake ID?
Funny enough, while I was in military school, I was in Lexington, Missouri.
Right.
And in Missouri at that time, there was 3-2 bars.
Oh.
So we would go to an upperclassman would have a car,
Right.
and we would go to Warrensburg, Missouri, or I think that was where we'd go, and there was 2 bars there, 2 bars, the Paradise and the Star Bar. And you could get in for $5, and Dixie cups, very cheap, quarter beers, maybe $1 beers. And
What year was this?
well, I graduated high school in '93.
Oh,
Okay.
no way.
Yep.
Huh.
So this was probably that 92, 93 year when I was doing that. But we weren't 18 yet. So we would get in these 18 plus 2 bars with our fake military school IDs that we'd make, and they'd take them.
Of course, it's small town Missouri.
Yeah, they'd take them.
And it's 93, so,
Yeah, it was a little bit different back then.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's how we got away with that. And we did that, every weekend we had a furlough is what they call it. We got a weekend furlough, and we could be gone from, Friday after school till Sunday at 11 or something.
That's a lot of freedom for high school kids.
Yeah, you had to, be a junior, senior year.
Mm-hmm.
You had to, I think parents had to
Sign off on it.
sign off on it, okay it. You couldn't have shitty grades.
Right.
You couldn't be
It was a privilege you had to
It
earn.
was a privilege you had to earn, and I think certain ranks and above could go do that.
Right.
And I was high ranking in my junior and senior year.
Didn't you, just to pivot real quick, didn't you and Doug Walker go to the same military school?
We did.
My other bandmate from Monolith who we had on the show
in fact,
recently.
I think he started the year after I graduated.
Really? Did you guys really know each other, or you just kind of...
No, we figured. He posted a picture of himself in this Wentworth uniform. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And that's how we kind of put those pieces together. But it turns out that one of my best friends, Brian Roberts, in military school, was 1 year younger than me. We were roommates at one point.
Right.
He was a senior when I think Doug came in to military school, and maybe Doug came in as a senior, I don't know.
Right.
But he got to know Brian because Brian was a musician, bass player as well.
Right.
And I think they started playing music together at military school.
Oh, no way.
So he must have been in the same company that we were in.
Were you playing music when you were in military school?
I was. That's where I first learned to play the bass.
In military school, really?
And I only played, in fact, I didn't play bass after military school for a long time.
Right.
I only played bass in military school because the first year I was there, my roommate, Kurt Diaz, he's from Monterrey, Mexico. He was this guitar extraordinary, worshipped Stevie Vai and, Satriani and Yngwie Malmsteen.
Mm-hmm.
And he was learning guitar very, very quickly. He had rich parents, and they got him an Ibanez gem with the handle and the roses up the neck
No
and the
shit.
scalloped frets.
Wow.
And Kurt had all the cool toys.
With the handle?
Yeah, the handle.
And everything? Wow.
It was this, neon green and blue, and it's gorgeous. Anyhow, so we got paired as roommates, which couldn't have been more perfect. And, we're miserable kids in military school. No one wants to be there.
Right. What else are you going to do?
But he was this amazing guy that was just learning about American music in a big way because he was living in America.
Now, had you been playing any music at all up to that point?
Not really.
This was like the beginning.
This was the beginning.
Wow.
I played a little guitar. I'd taken some lessons as a kid. My dad was a musician.
Okay, so you were around it.
Yeah, my big brothers played music.
Okay.
So anyhow, he said, we need to jam. Me and you, we jam. And so we went to the music room at the school, and they had a really shitty old bass guitar with flat wound strings. And it's cool now when I think back, but at the time it was just like, it was atrocious. It was so embarrassing. So we jammed together. Then we met this cat named Levi Peckham, who was an upperclassman at the school, and he was a drummer. So we put together this little combo. We talked to the music teacher. He let us practice during lunch and after school some days. And we'd play at the football or the indoor games in the gym, basketball and things like that. And so we'd play before and, during breaks and just shred. That's where I learned to play the bass. He said, you have to play bass. So that's how I learned.
How quickly did you pick it up?
Really, really quick.
Yeah.
Mostly because of Kurt, because he would show me the bass lines. He'd just play them on the guitar. And we were so bored. We were so miserable.
You just play all day.
Military school. I mean, it's like, well, you don't play all day because you're getting your ass kicked all day.
Right.
With school
but in your
or military regiment. But in your downtime. And we, found time to have downtime. And a lot of it was just staying up all night.
Right.
Night guard would come through, make sure all the kids are sleeping. Then he's gone. and we're jamming. But so we got these Rockman. Remember Gordo? Remember the Rockman? You could plug into.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Kurt had one. Parents were rich. Got him one. I begged my parents for one, and I got one.
So what was it? It was like a Walkman that you could plug into.
Right. You could.
It's like a personal trainer.
Yeah, and it had
for instruments.
It had great effects on it. You could distortion, chorus, flanger, all kinds of fun stuff.
I had something like that. It was just like an amp that you plugged into, and like when I first started playing bass, and obviously I didn't stick with it, but when I started playing bass, my parents didn't get me an amp. They got me one of those ones that you like clip on your belt and you can plug into with headphones and listen to.
Sure.
Right. Same type of thing.
Pretty much the same thing. It's not an amp. It was just looked like a little Walkman, and there.
Right.
So we could just shed all night. We'd put one headphone in with music from a boombox, and then the other headphone you're hearing what you're jamming. Because I don't think at that time you couldn't link it with music or anything, your tape deck or your CD player.
Right. It's not like plugging in.
That would have been advanced technology at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
I love stories like that. There's been times when I've wanted to pick something up and I've been like, oh, I got to get this phrase trainer, or I got to get this app, or I got to get an interface so I can plug into GarageBand and do these things, or I got to get this piece of technology, or da 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 da. But then you read stories of I read Don Felder's book, and he's talking about how he learned to play guitar, and it's like, or like Slash learning to play guitar, and they're talking about having a reel-to-reel machine, with music on it, or recording songs from the radio onto a reel-to-reel or onto a cassette, and just press and play, playing along with it, and then rewinding it and doing it again.
Or you had front of the record player, lifting the arm up,
right?
And then back down and placing it where you needed it to be. Fuck, if we had all that stuff now, then maybe I wouldn't be very good.
Right.
Who knows?
But
I learned totally organically.
That's really cool.
I just started practicing doing a different version of my solo gigs with my old Fostex 4-track.
Amazing. That's
really?
Great.
Yeah, just laying down just using the 4 different tracks and laying down a bass line on one and a little drum track on another, and then
that's really
they
cool.
can just kind of fade out between them and when I'm playing and stuff. So
I had this idea recently of once we finish this next run of recordings with Evergroove, I have entertained the idea of I would have to replace the power source because I lost it years ago, but I have this Tascam 8-track. I've entertained the idea of just getting the guys together and going and renting a cabin and just taking that 8-track, because I think it's actually only 4 tracks that you can plug in XLR or quarter inch, but then there's another track for tape in or something like that, via RCA or something like that. But so I mean it for all intents and purposes, it's really only a 4-track, as far as stuff that you're able to plug into it. And I just, I don't know if you need as many of the bells and whistles as we have now to make something cool that people enjoy. You know what I mean? There's something to be said for a really great producer or recording in a really high quality studio like Evergroove. But there's this part of me that just wants to go do a deliberate, turn and burn, deliberately shitty record. You know what I mean? Just recording everything directly from mics to amps into the 4-track.
Well, that's how they used to do it.
That is how they used to do it. Yeah,
those albums weren't very shitty, were they?
No, they weren't. And they were
real and they sounded real.
They did. Have you heard? We've talked about it a couple times on this show. Ty was telling me about somebody took "Fool in the Rain" and quantized it, and it sounds terrible.
I don't even know what that is. What's quantized?
Like Beat Detective, running the drums through Beat Detective, and getting them in a grid so that everything hits on the beat perfectly.
To see where it matches up.
Right. So if you take John Bonham and you quantize it and quantize his drum parts, they sound bad because it doesn't have that push and pull and that swing that he had. You know what I mean?
Far out.
Yeah. So it's interesting to think about that, and we're getting ready to go in and do this next run of songs, and I'm like tempted to just do it without click track.
But can you? Because you've been so spoiled.
I know, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, that really comes down to Ty. We're really just going up there to get, as long as we walk away with drum tracks, you know, that's really all we need, and then everything else will happen in overdubs. But yeah, I wonder if like that's something we would be able to do. Gordo and the Granny Tweed guys, they don't use click track at all, mostly because Gordo can't talk his bandmates into using a click track. Like, they have no interest in it. They don't want to learn to play to it. And I'm like listening to their record and being like, wow, sounds like a really good record, and it's not all spit polished, and it doesn't have everything just like locked into place and everything like kind of regimented, you know. I know, it's interesting.
Or just do the whole thing like that. Yeah. Don't go back and overdub. See what happens.
Do the whole thing live.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is it would be fun to just get tapes upon tapes upon tapes of just jamming, and then take it in and see what you can make from it.
It'd be an incredible experiment.
It would be an incredible experiment, and it might end up being the most fun record we've ever done. I don't know.
Which record would this be for you guys?
Well, we're getting ready to release the third Ruckus record. As far as records that we've done in all time, I don't know. I would have to sit and figure it out. But it would be the third. We're getting ready to release the third Ruckus record, and then we're going in to record what would be the fourth and fifth Ruckus record. And then I was thinking after that, it would be fun to just go take a vacation with the guys and work on that. Like, I think that would be neat. You know what I mean?
That would be cool.
Yeah. So when you're learning to play bass, I think I heard you mentioning one time about you were saying how to get good at the bass was just basically, you know, metronome and modes. Like learn the modes and play the metronome. Were you doing it at this point, or is that something that you did when you started playing on a more professional level?
When I decided I wanted to get good at the bass, or good enough, that's when I felt like it was time to maybe do it the right way, whatever that is. But learning those modes, I went to Pro Sound Music on.
I remember Pro Sound on Alameda. Yeah.
And this cat Noel was there, and I mean, he was badass. He played with all the funk and soul bands. Sugar Bear was one of the bands he played with, and I always thought this dude was so cool. And I was in there looking at basses, and he said, "You need to, you know, first of all, you need to get a 5-string. Get yourself a 5-string." So I got a 5-string. That was way over my head at the time. Right. You know, Jaco Pastorius played with a 4-string. It's good enough for him.
Right.
That's good enough for me.
Right.
5-string didn't stick around too long, but anyhow, he had me buy this book with modes and just different scales, and I just shedded away at those a lot. Yeah. With a metronome.
So this is after military school. You come back, and so when you're in military school and you guys are playing and doing like school functions and things like that, are you just playing badly, or are you getting by and like are you guys a pretty decent band while you're doing this?
Probably fairly badly, maybe.
Right.
And Kurt, the guitar player, was so good, and his drummer was pretty seasoned for a kid as well. I don't know. I felt like I was doing pretty good.
Right.
Kurt would show me the lines, and like I said, I would shed all night on these things. Right. And we didn't have a catalog of 50 songs. I mean, we kind of played the same 5 songs over and over.
What kind of stuff were you guys playing?
Oh, Johnny Be Good.
Right.
Louie. Into Wild Thing.
Right.
Into Hang On Sloopy.
Yeah.
Into, countless other songs. The
you only need one piece of sheet music for everything.
Right, 3 chords. The toughest thing we did, I think we would do Cliffs of Dover by Eric Johnson.
Right.
I think that's not the one.
I have no idea.
Just killer tune. Kurt had that down, and that was my toughest bass line, and that really stretched me pretty far. And I don't know, I thought I was doing pretty good. So what made you want to get better then? What made you want I wanted to play in real bands. I wanted to play at bars. I just wanted to get out there and play with some real good players. So I started learning the modes, and I would sit down with a CD player and I would just learn songs. And then I started learning the blues. Right. Which is a really great intro for musicians. Not that the blues is easy if you learn how to do it right.
Right.
But the beginning blues is pretty easy for a bass player.
Right.
You know, you can get away with being real basic.
Right.
Learning the 12-bar blues.
Right, because it's just
1, 4,
about holding
5.
down the rhythm.
Right. And, I mean, I think I had a rhythm in me. You know, I've got music in my blood.
Right.
So I just started learning those blues bass lines. Then I started going down to Brendan's Pub when it was down at, 15th, 16th and Market, 17th and Market. It's now one of those, it's Oscar Blues place. They have live music. It was a Philly cheesesteak place before that. But anyways, Brendan's was the
17th
shit.
and Market, okay.
It's underneath, there was Crocs above it. It's in the basement.
Oh, yeah. It was like the Blue Mule at one
right,
point.
Right, it was the Blue Mule.
Double Daughter, I think, or Double Daughter was upstairs. Right.
Right.
Yeah, the Blue Mule downstairs. Okay, cool.
So after Brendan's moved out of there, it was Kevin Garrity who owned Brendan's.
Right, and then ended up moving it down, and he moved it
down to what is now, he left Brendan's on Market and then moved down to what is now the Marquee.
Oh.
So he did the build out on that space. He'd always dreamt of bringing Brendan's into a bigger space, with a bigger stage, more legit room, and it didn't transfer. It just worked in the basement. It didn't work down where the Marquee is now.
Right.
So they did a lot of work on it. I think he lost his ass on it. Kevin's a great guy. He brought blues to Denver for a long time.
Right.
But coming back to Brendan's downstairs, it's just this great blues room, and they had live music 7 nights a week. And back to the fake ID thing, that's how I first started getting into Brendan's. I had a decent-looking fake ID. And I wasn't going there to party, really. I was really going there to
you just wanted to go play.
Watch the music. And I went there on Monday nights, because Monday night was the blues jam, the open jam.
Right.
Larry Lorraine on bass, Rich Reno on guitar. I mean, just monster players. Really looked up to these guys.
So you were never doing like playing in punk rock bands or just shitty loud rock and roll bands. Like you went directly for like the big hitter, like the real players. That's like where you wanted to hang out and where you wanted to be.
Yeah, because I wanted to start gigging in the clubs.
What makes a 18, 19-year-old kid interested in playing in that kind of world? In playing, like, because that's like, if I was 18, 19 years old, I could see that being like old guy stuff to me, like dad rock to me. But that's like something that you wanted to be a part of.
I wanted to make a living playing music.
When did you decide that you wanted to play music? Like
probably
as a living?
In high school when we were just jamming.
You were like, I want to do this for a living.
Yep.
I want to make my living doing this.
I wanted to be a radio DJ. Was one of the things I wanted to do. And I ended up going to college for broadcast communications. It was my major, which obviously never used.
Where'd you go?
I went to Metro State.
Oh, you went to Metro? Okay.
Right. And I did the internships and all that, but I obviously didn't take that course in my life. But I wanted to play music, and I wanted to make money doing it. And I knew that a lot of these bands that were playing out were a lot of blues bands, a lot of jazz bands, things like that. I don't know where that
Did you
came
know
from,
that did you know that like playing the bass was going to be like something that was in demand, like it was going to be something that got you work, or was it just the instrument you stuck with, or I
felt like it was going to get me work because I've always had friends as musicians growing up, and I always knew everyone was a guitar player, especially at that time.
Right.
Guitar is not nearly as cool now as it was then.
Right.
So bass was, I just felt like, man, I can get gigs if I play bass.
Right.
So I started going down to this jam, and I eventually had the balls to get up on stage, or they coaxed me up there. And the first few times I went down, they put me up with, the shitty players.
Right.
I got a list of guys. I gotta get Jimmy on stage tonight.
It's like an open mic comedy thing. Like you go get on the list, and then it's like, yeah, he's been showing up every week, and we haven't put him on, so let's get him up here.
Right. And they were great. They were really encouraging. I think because I'm a bass player,
right,
or I was an aspiring bass player. I think Larry Lorraine, the bass player, was on stage all night during that jam, and he wanted to go grab a beer.
Right. So they needed somebody else to sit in and do it.
Let's make this dude happy, and maybe he'll get good enough, and he can come down every week. Well, it happened. I started going down every single week, and it made me a great, much better player real fast.
Wow.
So I started learning the blues.
And you're how old at this point?
1920.
So you're still doing the fake ID at this point? Like you're still, like, you're not even 21 going down to this place.
Right,
Holy
yep.
shit.
Yep.
That's really cool. I've never asked you about this. You know, we've been friends a long time, and I have never asked you about this.
Well, I believe that's how it kind of all started.
Wow.
You know? And from that, I met a lot of the bands, or early bands that I was in Denver, and a lot of people that I'm still close with.
So what was the first band you were in Denver?
I was in a band called Emilio. And Emilio.
Oh, you were in Emilio?
Yeah.
No way, because he still does shit.
Yeah, he still plays around.
Yeah.
But I was enamored by him. He would come down to the jam, and he would, he's just a guitar slinger. I thought he was the shit.
Yeah.
And I got paired with him one night, and we ended up kind of being buddies. And he said, hey, I was living in North Denver at the time, and so was he. He said, you should come over to my house someday and jam. I'd love to have you come jam. And I did, and he just kind of showed me some bass lines, and in conjunction with that, he said, if you're going to play bass, you need to understand the drums. So he put me behind the drum set and showed me some rhythms and things like that.
So you can play the drum.
I cannot play the drums.
Well, but you could probably play the drums better than I could.
Maybe. Yeah. But he wanted me to at least understand the drums and the inner workings between a drummer and a bass player.
He's like your Obi-Wan, like at this point.
You bet.
Yeah.
Well, he was my mentor, and I really looked up to this guy. Later on, I was, we had our issues, but I still loved the dude, and he got me, put me in front of some of my biggest crowds.
Like what? Like what did you do?
Well, I was playing for Emilio for about 3 years. We opened up for Eric Johnson.
No fucking way.
Robin Trower at the Ogden Theater.
No way.
We opened up for Ronnie Montrose at the Leadfoot Theater.
This is in your early 20s you're doing this?
Yes.
Wow.
So this is the time when nobody in particular, NIPP, ran Bluebird and Ogden, booked those rooms.
Yes. Steve Schott,
Doug Kaufman, Chris Swank.
Chris Swank, and this is back when the Three Kings guys were like working security.
Sure, they were working over there.
Yeah.
So yeah, Emilio was just one of those guys at that time who was getting a lot of those big opening slots. And we opened for Gil Scott-Heron one night. So we did all these really amazing shows.
You opened for Gil Scott-Heron? That's really fucking cool, dude.
That was at the Bluebird as well.
Wow.
So I had but believe me, we were doing shithole bars too.
Right.
At that time, Emilio was working a lot. He was really a hustler. He had a lot of people really loved him. He had a lot of friends.
He was playing like every night, probably.
I believe he was playing 3 to 4 nights a week.
And were you playing with him 3 to 4 nights a week, or was he switching people out?
I think I was playing with him full time steadily during that period. So I was playing a ton.
Our mutual friend Chad Amon. He's got like a rotating cast of people that he does stuff with.
A lot of jazzers do that. A lot of blues guys do that.
Right, but now, you were like his main clutch bass player.
I think I was his main bass player, and I think a lot of it had to do with I was cheap. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You were young and hungry.
Yeah, I was 15, 20 years younger than him. I was hungry. I wasn't going to say no to any gig.
Right.
I showed up early. I helped load in. I worked hard.
Wow.
And I wanted that gig real bad. But from that gig, it opened a lot more doors, and I ended up just meeting a lot of other great musicians and getting hired for other gigs and other bands.
And now what is your day job at this point? Are you just playing music at this point? Because this is before you had kids and everything, so your overhead was low.
Yeah, no, then I had all the jobs.
Right.
I mean, I worked at Pizza Hut. That time I was gigging a lot, so I would come in the morning really early to do the prep, and I would do the lunch buffet at Pizza Hut.
The lunch buffet? I remember the lunch buffet at Pizza Hut.
Buffet.
Dude, it's like when you get all your Book It stars and you get to go in and have your personal pan pizza, you get the buffet and the salad. Sure. I remember that shit.
This was the red roof. They call it the red roof if it was a dine-in, and it was on right off Tamarack and 225.
There's probably like one dine-in Pizza Hut in the whole state of Colorado now, if it's even still there.
Yeah, you don't see them much anymore.
No,
it's a dying breed.
Yeah, that was a cool gig for me because I made a good hourly.
Right.
And then I'd keep that hourly all day, and then I'd go hustle tables. It's not really a tricky serving job to serve a buffet.
Right.
You bring them a big red cup of Coca-Cola, and they go help themselves, and then you clean up their enormous mess of pizza crust all over the table. But I'd hustle out an extra $40-$50 for a lunch shift, so I was doing pretty good at that time.
Yeah, I mean, for that age and that time, and low overhead, and it was allowing you to go play at night. And dude, you're talking about doing huge gigs at this point.
Yeah, but those gigs weren't paying a dime. When you're the opener for the big band.
Right.
Band maybe making $100, $150.
Right, and they're not. And Emilio's probably not
he ain't splitting it evenly.
Right.
Which I years later when I learned enough lessons, I'm like, fuck this, I'm out of here. But, I had a lot of jobs, and I ended up, so 2 more jobs that I ended up working at Denny's doing the graveyard shift.
I did Denny's
on Arapahoe and I-25. In fact, actually, I did that before Pizza Hut. And I would work Sunday through Thursday. So I always had Friday and Saturday off to do gigs.
Right.
And then eventually I went over and I worked for the Welshire Inn.
Yeah.
Which I ended up doing for a good 4 years.
Right.
We had a lot of mutual friends. That worked for me because I was a manager.
Johnny and Fatty worked for him at that point too, didn't he?
Fatty didn't work there, but Paul Niebel.
Oh, Paul Niebel, yeah.
And Moose worked there.
Yeah, so all the kids my age and younger are like, and you're like the older guy than them, like probably their supervisor.
I was 2, maybe 3 years older than them.
Oh, okay.
But I was looking for trouble too, so we had a lot of fun.
Right.
So, but I did these jobs so I built, basically to this day, I built my entire life so I could have
the freedom.
Nights off, or in my older years owning my own businesses, so I could have the freedom to go on the road.
Are you touring at this point already?
No.
When did you start touring?
I started touring when I started playing with Doug Kershaw.
So much later, because you didn't start playing with Doug until when? When did you start playing with Doug?
So my daughter's 14. It was right before she was born when I started playing with Doug Kershaw. So 14 years ago.
So is this before or after Mercury Project?
That was post Mercury Project.
That was post Mercury. Okay, so let's wait to get to that then. So what happens after you part ways with Emilio? Who are you playing with then?
Oh, I played with a band called the Trainwreckers, which was an awesome band, female, kind of 2 sisters led the band, these, dreamy, blood harmonies, like Heart, It was a really neat band. And that was a hard-working band. And at that same time, I was playing with a number of bands while I was playing with the Trainwreckers. So I was gigging almost every single weekend and 2 to 3 weeknights a week. So you're
just hiring yourself out, just doing the hired gun thing at this point.
Yeah, I played with, Michael Hornbuckle.
Yeah.
During a big period of that time, I played with the Clam Daddies.
You played with the Clam Daddies, really?
Yeah. I did that for a good 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So, and then, playing with Moses Walker taught me a lot about music because he's
amazing. Yeah.
He plays these jazz chords and these songs with a million changes. So I wasn't, I went from kind of almost faking it for a long time to actually learning it.
Right.
I wasn't playing just these, modes or lines or 12-bar blues anymore. I was starting to play some pretty far out things. So my first experience with a real rock or pop band was the Mercury Project.
Right.
I was going to school at Metro. Sam Emerson, John Emerson's sister, knew this band that was forming called the Mercury Project. They'd been around about a year, and they needed a bass player. And I got the gig, and I think I played in that band for about 6 years.
I remember seeing you guys at Cervantes.
Sure.
I want to say.
Yeah, we would.
Yeah.
We mostly played.
Great band.
We mostly played at Herman's. And, we always had a great crowd. I loved that band because 60% of the crowd was female.
Right.
And cute girls.
Oh, yeah.
And, You guys are very catchy, very, very danceable, very accessible. The girls loved you guys. Yeah, it was I remember that. So awesome. And, we'd win these Battle of the Bands and Westward Awards, and it was just a lot of fun. It was a great group of guys. And at that time, I was working at JL Cheers on Hampton and Monaco as a bartender.
I go to the Bagel Deli all the time.
Yeah.
And JL Cheers is right around the corner there.
Yeah, at the bottom of the hill there.
Yeah, and it just occurred, because I live up at basically Mississippi, where Mississippi and...
Yeah, you're not too far from Cheers.
Yeah, so I'm right over there by Fairmount Cemetery, right there. And it took several times of Sarah and I going there before I realized that JL Cheers was like a place that like 4th-year freshmen played. Like
they did play there. Yeah,
dude. Like they've been. Wait, were you working there when we played there?
No, that was right after me.
Really?
Because I had bought Cafe Zero by that time.
Oh.
But, so back then Cheers was, that's where you went if you went to Cherry Creek or TJ.
Yeah.
And you were underage. You went to Cheers.
Yeah.
And we let you drink.
Yeah.
And that dream ended. We got in big trouble.
So it's probably changed ownership several times.
No, it's the same owner.
Is it
Jack
really?
Loman is the owner, and he's a super awesome dude. And in fact,
he just cleaned house at a certain point.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
He was my mentor in the bar business, so I attribute a lot of my knowledge on bar ownership to Jack, because I left the Welshire Inn. I was laid off, and I had popped into Cheers to get wasted on the day I was laid off, and Jack's daughter was there working there behind the bar, and I told her the deal, and she said, "Listen, man, we need a manager over here really bad."
Really?
So I came in and met with the owner the next day, and he offered me the job. So I was the general manager of
How
Cheers.
long were you at JL Cheers for?
I was at Cheers for, 3.5, 4 years.
And then you went to Herman's from there, or?
No, I bought Cafe Zero from there.
So wait, because I remember you bartending at Herman's Hideaway. Like that's how
I did work at Herman's.
Well, that's how you and I met.
Right.
Is because fourth year would do shows over at Herman's, and we really liked playing there. Like we were one of the few of our contemporaries, because there was always this kind of like meme in the punk rock and metal scene that just like shit on Herman's.
Yeah, I mean, it's still that way.
Right.
Because Herman's is it ain't punk rock.
Right. There was just something that like people thought it was uncool, but we always loved playing there because you and Chris Thomas and Mike, like everybody that was running that place, took really good care of us, and we always had a really good time.
Yeah, it's a great place.
And that's where you and I met. And I always remember you being just very friendly and very accommodating, and one of the reasons that we love playing there so much. But that was before you owned Cafe Zero?
No, that was after.
That was after Cafe Zero.
So the timeline is I went from the Welshire to JL Cheers, and I left the JL Cheers when I had the opportunity to buy this little bar on South Broadway called Cafe Zero. It was at South Broadway between Lincoln and Arkansas.
It was such a cool place.
And yeah, 1 block north of Herman's Hideaway. And I'd always adored this place. And I was in this mindset my last year at Cheers. I had learned so much about the business. The owner had taught me so much about ordering product and inventory and scheduling and staffing and just many of the ins and outs of the business. I said, shit, I can do this myself. We all get that feeling. You work somewhere and you go, man, I could do this better.
Right.
Well, can you put it to the test?
Right.
So
can you do it day in and day out? Can you do it better? Like, can you show up at, like from open to close and do it better, or are you going to burn out?
That's right. I mean, the owner of Cheers has had the place for 40 years now.
Wow.
And he's still moving on with it. So I left Herman's Hideaway. I bought this bar, and I ran Zero for, I don't know, 3.5 years or something like that.
It was such a cool place, man. It was
a great place.
For people who aren't from here or don't remember it, what was so cool about Cafe Zero is it was just like an old Victorian house that had been converted into a bar.
Right.
And it had, it like different room, like it had kind of this open floor plan, but it was like somebody had taken a dollhouse and just like and cut out the center, so there was like rooms that were all accessible and there was like different compartments in all over the bar.
And then upstairs with couple little nooks and
it was such a cool place, and like fish tanks and you could go in there and party, and like you could spend all night just moving into different areas of the bar.
Yeah, it was a special place. The
very special place.
Yeah, the fish tank was great. I love that.
Yeah.
But that was one of those, just one more cost, one more thing to pay for and maintain.
Right, having someone come in and do that. And it had a kitchen too, and good food.
It had a kitchen, yeah. That was always a big struggle for me.
Right.
Was kitchen. I mean, Fat Body ran that kitchen at one time. I had Roe ran that kitchen at one time. Maybe Fat Body was working for Roe. I just don't remember.
Right.
A lot of those years I don't remember, but
right. There was a lot of partying going on at that time.
There was a lot of partying for me and our clientele, but it was a special place. It was. Didn't have neons and TVs everywhere. I had one TV behind the bar, and if it was on, it probably had cartoons on it.
Right.
I had a neat jukebox that I wouldn't do the digital jukebox because I wanted the CD loading jukebox so I could pick all of the CDs. So it was like the soundtrack of my life. Plus, I would always do local bands and things like that.
Right.
And that made us some money. This jukebox made us money.
We always had so much fun playing there. Like when you owned it, and when Brian,
from Streets, he bought
Brian from Streets came
bought
in and,
Zero from you,
and bought it from you, yeah. And even when he owned it, it was really fun. But something about the vibe of that place, it was just unsustainable.
I thought he ruined Zero.
Did you?
I liked the guy, but he made it into something that it probably shouldn't have been. The neighborhood couldn't sustain it.
What do you mean by that? Like, what is it that the neighborhood couldn't sustain it?
Kind of bringing Streets of London to this gentrifying spot on South Broadway, and it had generally made it was busy, and we had live music, and that was loud, so my neighbors didn't like that either. That was a constant issue for me, which I've subsequently gone through at the Oriental as well.
Of course.
But it was just kind of it was a late night musicians hangout. This is where you'd go, you get off, if you have an early gig, you get off your gig and you come down to Zero because 7 nights a week there's going to be music. Mm-hmm. And 3 or 4 of those nights were a jam of a different variety.
Right.
We had a reggae jam, a funk jam, a kind of a acoustic singer-songwriter night, and then, something else on the other night, and then other local bands on the other nights.
It had a very speakeasy feel to it. Because it's kind of tucked away off of Broadway, and the view is a little obscured by the trees and everything there.
Yeah,
and
it's unsuspecting. You can really just blow by it.
They don't have a giant sign up that says "Bar, come drink here." And,
Actually, I had 2 really cool signs. We had taken the O from an old Woolworth sign, which was giant. And that was the frame of the sign, and then neon Zero or Cafe Zero on the sign. And at one point it said, cocktails, food, espresso. Because initially we were it had that vibe of almost a coffee shop too.
Right.
So we had these expensive coffee makers, so we were gonna go that route. But those, if you know anything about bartending, if you want to pour drinks, you got to make a cappuccino. And
if you've got to stop and make an espresso, you're going to fucking kill the person who orders it.
Yeah. Right? So those machines eventually broke.
Right.
And we just ditched them.
Yeah.
So we took the espresso part off the neon and put live music on there.
Right.
But then I had this idea that we're going to put this big sign that just says bar. My buddy Jay, who was a neon guy, worked for Acme Neon.
Right.
He made this cool sign. It said bar, and then it had these like flashing, marquee lights around it, like you're at Lakeside.
Right. Okay. Yes, I remember that now.
Super cool.
Okay, it's coming back. Yeah.
And I had that up for, short of a year, but the city made me take it down.
Why did the city make you take it down?
Because it was too distracting for people driving by.
Driving down Broadway.
That was the point. I wanted your eye to, catch and look, and see. But they said you need a permit for that sign.
Right.
And we didn't want to fool.
And it's old Broadway, and it's kind of residential, And
I think at that time it was all antique stores over there.
Right. It was kind of a sleepy part of Broadway.
At night it was so sleepy.
It hadn't quite gotten there yet. That was a big problem that we had when I was at the Overland. And bushwhackers kind of had
people weren't driving down that way as much, and there's not a scene. There's not foot traffic over there.
Right. Everything shuts down at a certain time. Yeah.
The benefit was there was plenty of parking at Zero. We had a lot out back, and you could park on both sides of Broadway across the street. The only thing maybe you were fighting for parking with Herman's a little bit, but sometimes you get some of that foot traffic pre and post show from Herman's for their bigger shows.
Right.
And we had a good relationship between the 2 bars, so we try to promote each other.
That's really cool.
But Ciro was a great time. So that was my first taste of bar ownership and entrepreneurship.
Right. And are you still playing at this point?
I'm playing, but I'm playing less.
Right. Are you doing Mercury Project, or is Mercury Project done by this
The first year of Ciro, I still was in Mercury Project, and the band gifted me some performances at Ciro.
Oh, cool.
Like our grand opening, and then one or two after that, and that was huge for us because that place wasn't too big. I mean, maybe if the whole thing was packed up and down, patios and everything, you could put 200 people in the whole place.
Oh yeah.
But we had a couple great nights from that, which helped me out a lot as a business person. So, and then the band ended up splitting apart. Guys moving, different interests, things like that.
Right.
So I kind of slowed down on playing, but quickly I ended up getting hired to play on the road with Doug Kershaw.
Okay, so this is when Doug Kershaw
started.
So for people who don't know, no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
This is also when I had my first child. My daughter was born.
So you started playing. So you had Ciro and started playing with Doug Kershaw and had your daughter all around this.
Pretty much the week I was buying Ciro, Casey said, "Come over," and I went over. And Casey, is my wife now. She's beautiful and I love her, but we were just dating.
Right.
I had met her at Cheers. She would come to Mercury Project shows. And then, she says, "I'm pregnant. So I've got a baby coming, and I just bought this bar."
Right.
Yeah. And then
so what's going through your head when that's going on?
Oh, man, I don't know. I was numbing my head a lot at that time. I was super stressed. I was really worried.
Were you scared about being a dad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just scared about being a dad.
How old were you when?
29 into 30.
Dude, yeah. I mean, I love Sarah and I love my son so much, and I was so excited when I found out I was going to be a dad. But I'm almost 40. If I had been 29 when I found that out, it would have scared the shit out of me, man.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't done partying.
Right.
I mean, I definitely wasn't done partying. I wasn't ready. I wasn't financially viable.
You felt like you couldn't support a family anyway.
I think I knew I could.
If you had to, right.
I'd been hustling for a lot of years, and I was making dough.
Right.
When I worked at Cheers, I was making a lot of dough.
Right.
And that was fun, but I was selfish and irresponsible, and I was pissing it all away, and I was
like 29-year-olds are.
Like you do when you're 29.
Yeah.
Right. And then, I meet this girl who's really just fantastic, and she gets pregnant.
Right.
And we all know how that happens.
Right.
And but I wasn't convinced I wanted to be with her.
Right.
I think I was scared because she was kind of perfect.
Right.
But I didn't want to be in a relationship. I wasn't ready.
Right. It probably all seemed very permanent and very final at that time.
Yes.
And it probably seemed like it was going to be the end of a lot of things.
Yeah, it did. And then, throw this brand new bar. That's like having a baby.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you just got to...
It's a life suck, man.
You got to be there.
Yeah.
You got to put the time in. It's a cash business.
Yeah.
I mean...
no one's going to run it for you.
No, and it needs to be, nurtured and, coddled.
Yeah.
The whole, really, most of the whole time you own it, especially your first couple years, if you want it to make it. And I had made a big investment in this place, and I had just put everything on the line for it. I left what I thought was a pretty awesome job at the time to go out on my own and try to do this.
Right. So then what happens? So you find out Casey's pregnant, you got the bar going on, and then you find out you get offered how do you get offered to go tour? For people who don't know, Doug Kershaw, I didn't know who Doug Kershaw was, really. I knew you had played with him. And then I heard that show, Cocaine and Rhinestones, that podcast with Tyler Mahan Coe. And he did an episode on Doug Kershaw. And that's when I really started to find out who he was. So
it was an incredible story, too.
Yeah, a very incredible story.
That's just this much of this guy's legacy.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, Doug Kershaw is like an iconic Cajun fiddle player.
Right.
He is he in the Country Music Hall of Fame? Is he?
He's not in the Country Music Hall of Fame.
He should be in the Country Music Hall of Fame.
He is in the Cajun Music Hall of Fame, which actually I I was present for when he was inducted.
Were you really present for that?
Oh,
that like made me tear up a little.
Yeah, it was cool. That was in
that's beautiful.
Lafayette, Louisiana, at the Cajun Music Hall of Fame. And in fact, it was the Cajun Music Hall of Fame's first year. It had just been born.
Right.
He was one of their first inductees.
Did they just start that because they were tired of seeing their artists being passed over by the Country Music Hall of Fame, like not taken seriously?
Probably. I think Cajuns have often felt very discriminated against.
And they are.
As a people,
right,
and as musicians.
Right.
But there's so many incredible Cajun musicians, which I learned about just because of playing with Doug.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because that just is like... This is like a huge part of your life right here.
Yeah, it's a big part.
Yeah, because you're being pulled in all these different directions by all these really huge life-changing blessings. So tell me a little bit more about what's going on at this point when you're kind of at this crossroads and being pulled in all these different directions. So like what ends up happening with Doug? How do you get that gig?
I got the gig with Doug primarily because his drummer, who had been with him 10 years, was a buddy of mine who I'd gigged around Denver with. And so he wanted me to get the gig, but Dave's exiting bass player, David Foray, that's Cajun, he had been with Doug, I think, 15, maybe 20 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
Dave also liked me a lot. He played in a band with Tempa. Do you know Tempa from Tempa and the Tantrums?
Mm-mm.
Great local singer. She now lives in Hawaii, maybe. But so Dave liked me as well. And he, spoke for me, and so did Jeff. And I was sitting at home one day, and I got a phone call, and it was Doug Kershaw. And I couldn't believe my ears, because of course I know Doug Kershaw, because my dad was a big country fan and loved Cajun country, and he loved Doug Kershaw. And I remember the Kershaw albums, which I still have of my dad's, which
they're so good.
Goofy pictures of Doug on the front with his fiddle and these crazy outfits and faces, and they were just wild and far out albums.
An amazing player. Just an amazing player.
Yeah, truly amazing. He toured with the Stones.
Doug Kershaw toured with the
support,
Stones?
Right.
No way.
Yeah, he did. And he was also he was an actor. He ended up moving out to LA to be closer to the, to film and TV, because
what has he been in?
He was in a movie called Zachariah. It was kind of this 70s acid cowboy flick.
Right.
It's not great, but some people think it's.
And he just plays Cajun weirdo guy number.
He's some sort of devil with a fiddle in some crazy scene.
No way.
But primarily he was doing all the television circuit. He was the very first guest on the Johnny Cash show.
What?
With Bob Dylan.
What?
He was, he just did all those variety shows that were big at the time. You just got tapped because you had those relationships with. I think, yes, that's exactly why I got it.
Right.
And again, young, pliable,
hungry,
affordable,
right,
agreeable. I'll take the gig, and I'll be.
Well, and you're a versatile player.
Right.
Like, people who haven't seen you play. The first time you and I really worked together, and this is just a quick aside, the first time you and I really worked together, in fact, this was really the first time I think I paid attention to you playing. Because during the times that I had seen, like, the Mercury Project play, I was drunk, so I wasn't a really serious musician, so I wasn't really paying attention to the individual players in the band. So the first time I remember seeing you play was when you came in and contributed to the White Fudge Colfax of Life album.
Right.
And we're sitting up at Adam Arate's home studio above the 16th Street Mall and just watching you learn and lay stuff. Like, that was the first time I remember seeing what I would call like a session player, studio musician come in and just lay stuff down very quickly and just pick up on the arrangement of the song and things real quick and just be like, do you guys like that? What do you think of that? Okay, cool. I'll take another pass at it.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I had a lot of respect for you through watching that happen, and I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself as a performer, but more importantly as a musician, as a melodist. Like, I thought of myself as a vocalist, but not a singer necessarily. And that was probably the first time that I worked with like a pro who encouraged me Like, you were probably the first real professional musician to give me any sort of encouragement as to my craft.
Okay.
You know, no, seriously, you know, just saying things like, you know, hey, you've got a really good ear, or, you know, hey, that sounds really cool.
I remember being there very well.
You do?
I do.
Yeah, man. Those were really fun times.
I remember not knowing what I was walking into. I mean, not having a clue. I'd seen White Fudge as just the MCs and
turntables, yeah.
And Brad, you know, at Herman's and maybe some other place.
Probably did something at Cerro before, maybe.
Probably.
Maybe.
And then Fat Body, I've always loved and respected. He's my, you know, dear friend. I think it was him that asked if I'd come lay down some tracks. I really didn't know what I was walking into.
Right.
Just brought my bass in, and then I just put the headphones on and started listening to some of or was in the booth listening to some of the tracks that were in the works, and I was like, oh, this is cool, man. Let me get the bass out. Let's play.
Right.
So I think the first thing I did, I was just fucking around. I was just warming up. I was just playing bass lines, and I was screwing around, playing little Jocko lines and playing some Marcus Miller funk lines. And Eric, producer, that we said?
Adam.
Oh,
Adam
sorry,
Arate.
of course,
Yeah.
And he's genius. I love that dude.
Yeah.
He was recording all of that.
Right.
He's like, do that again. I'm like, do what again? You know, that's just me jacking around like while you were setting up over there. So we ended up, I think, doing about an hour of me just screwing around, just doing different bass lines.
Right.
Some walking bass lines. I did some Latin things. I did like a soca rhythm. I did some jazzy kind of stuff and did some chording and just, you know, weird stuff. And he's like, I can use a lot of that. That's great.
That was one thing that was really cool about working with him, and also later on when we were working with Kyle, is because their background was more like Adam especially, because Adam's background was more electronic music and more like dance music.
Right.
He would just take stuff and chop it up and sample it and place it wherever it was appropriate.
That's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand what he was.
Right, because you and I are used to, you write a song, you go into the studio and you record the song.
Yeah, you do 5 takes on that song.
Right.
So I didn't know what he had in mind, but I've been in the studio enough times, and I recognized him as well enough as, you know, knowing what he was doing.
Right.
So I just followed direction. I mean, I think for 3 minutes I just went,
I remember that.
You know, just different slides.
Right.
I'm like, hey, you just tell me what to do, I'll do it, because I'm having fun here.
Right.
We were having it was
a really fun record to make.
And then I think it was like, hey, let me hear some tracks that you've already, you know, got a lot done on or whatever. And he played them, and then I just started throwing some bass lines down on him. And that album, it came more naturally than most albums I've done, because I think I just had so much freedom. There was no expectations of me.
Right.
I wasn't getting paid.
Yeah.
I wasn't on any sort of clock that I knew of.
It wasn't like you had to like land a take.
Right.
It's just like go in and jam and fuck around, and then he'll go in and chop it up and put it where it needs to
And
go.
he was so stoked the whole time, like, I don't even think there was 2 separate rooms. I think he was sitting right next to me or something. I'm in a little.
He was sitting right next to you.
And he was so stoked on the playing, which made me feel really good. So I was just excited, and I think I was feeling really on, and I was just trying to. So anyways, we played like, I don't know which tracks, but he played some tracks, and then I just started laying bass lines out, and it just came real fast. And I was super stoked with it. I think I did 2 sessions at that studio.
Yeah.
And he was able to mix and match, use what he wanted, ditch the rest, and man, that album's good.
It's a fun album.
Colfax Live is
and I mean,
album.
I would not want to make an album like that again, because it almost killed us just because of all of the coke and booze
drugs,
and Adderall.
There was a lot of drugs. I remember walking in, and I think that's the first thing I saw. You know? I mean, that's how I do. But no, not how I do. But that was
at that time.
Anything gonna get done here?
Right.
Was my concern.
Well, and I mean, at that time, you know, I won't name names, but one of us was selling drugs at that time.
Sure, so it was in good supply.
So it was always around, and because they were selling drugs, the studio was always getting paid for. So it's like every Tuesday night, we're just going to go to the studio and do a bunch of drugs and fuck around, and we're going to get our friends to come in and do this. And it was exciting for Adam too, because I don't think he had really worked with a ton of analog musicians.
Right.
You know, I don't think he had done a ton of stuff where a guitar player or a bass player is coming in and contributing parts to the songs. You know what I mean? Like, he was used to, like, plugging in his MIDI controller or his keyboard, or just
he was working alone.
Yeah, he would. He and his cousin Derek.
Yeah, right.
Were you plug it in straight to the board on that stuff, or were you?
It was directly into an interface, right?
I didn't bring anything in, so I'm sure I just went right into the board, and it just sounded so good in my headphones. It all just sounded right, you know, like it, despite all of the drugs. Maybe that's why it sounded so right. But it all sounded so rad right away.
It was so fun. I hear that record and I wish I could go back and sing it knowing what I know about recording vocals now. Like, that's like the only thing, is it's such a cool record and it was just like so amazingly produced, but I don't like my performance on it.
I do. I love it. I love that album.
It's a fun album.
I think you guys were all super good on it. And I think that, I don't know, because I wasn't there during the whole process, but it felt like when I walked in, I'm like, these fucking guys. These guys don't have a plan. Not like I was some sort of hot shot, like, you're lucky to have me here.
Right.
I've gone to enough situations like that where I felt like I was super wasting my time. Like, this is super lame.
Right.
But
then you get in there and it's just like this totally creatively free environment.
Well, and the vibe was there. Yeah. And everyone was stoked, and everyone was stoked to have me there. So it felt really good, and I think that reflected in my playing.
Yeah. Is that what encouraged you to actually come and play with us as a band? Was just that experience?
Not that experience, but when I heard that album, when I don't remember when I got it, but I remember listening to it being like, this is freaking great. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling Jerry and Josh for sure, like, this needs to be a band. Right. Like this, we need to be doing this with all the guys. Yeah,
you got Chad Amon for us. I remember that.
Yeah, when we were doing Bust a Nut.
Yeah, you were like, we need a keys player on this. We need a synth player on this. I've got this guy Chad Amon that he'll come in, and we met Chad Amon for the first time, and he came over to Bart's studio back when he was at Motoland. Motoland, yeah. And we recorded all the stuff there, and then it's.
I remember being concerned, like. I called Chad and I'm like, listen.
Just so you know.
I've got this thing. We're doing the studio thing and
it's very adult.
Yeah, I was like, I know it's because really, I've known Chad for many years, but I didn't know him as like a super tight buddy kind of until that experience. Right. He had his rehearsal dinner at Cafe Zero, you know, so I'd always known the guy, but I knew him as a serious jazzer. Right. And I'm like, throwing him this curveball of White Fudge, like this explicit, just no holds barred, just jackassery.
Which is really just punk rock guys who like hip hop. Right. It was all. And metal and all the rest of it that just also happened to like hip hop, and Jerry thought it would be like, Jerry wanted to make like a Brother Lynch hung record, right? Like he wanted to make a gangster rap record, right? Because he was into that stuff and wasn't getting that need met through playing in like fourth year freshman or whatever, you know, that he was doing at that time. And to be frank, he wasn't really flexing his abilities in that band because, you know, Jerry can strum out, you know, a few chords on a guitar, but his skill set really lies in writing incredibly clever lyrics.
Oh, he's much better suited in a band like White Fudge than fourth year. Right. Obviously.
So we did take a quick aside there, but I want to keep going about Doug Kershaw. So you're playing with Doug. What happens when you first show up and start rehearsing the material with Doug Kershaw?
There was no rehearsal.
You were just expected to know this stuff.
Yep, never once rehearsed. So that first phone call, it was so quick, like, and he's Cajun, and he's real Cajun. And
so you can't like even understand him.
Very hard to understand. Yeah, really frustrating. In fact, I taught him to text.
Did you?
When texting was starting to happen, when you had to, you know,
T9.
Right. I was driving the van, and he was sitting next to me.
And he's like, "What you doing over there, boy?"
Well, he did. He said, "Can you tell me about the texting thing?" You know, and I walked him through it. And I mean, he's still a shitty texter. And the technology's gotten so much better and easier. But I love that story because I remember teaching Doug Kershaw how to text. So anyhow,
you heard it here first, everybody.
Yeah, wow.
Andy Bercaw taught Cajun country music,
the Raging
fiddle,
Cajun,
like the
Doug
Raging
Kershaw.
Cajun himself, how to text.
Yeah. And then, you know, I would later regret that.
Oh, right.
But
because he doesn't know like texting etiquette or
exactly, and everything is in, just like his emails.
All caps?
Yes. Just like his emails, all caps. And I always thought that was just an ego thing. You gotta, you know.
No, it's adults that don't know how to use the technology and they just don't understand the nuance and the etiquette of it. That's fucking hilarious, Andy.
So he had called me. He said, "I'm looking for a bass player."
Right.
Doug, that's wow, cool, sounds great. You know, I'd kind of felt like maybe it was coming because Jeff had said he's bucking for me to get this gig. We didn't know how quick David Foray was leaving the band. Dave left like instantly.
As soon as the spot was filled, he was just out.
As soon as I think Jeff told him, Andy said he would do it, he's out. Doug said, "I need you in Naturita, Colorado tomorrow." Tomorrow.
And you didn't know any of the material. Did he send you a set list or anything?
No.
You were just expected to be able to follow.
Jeff gave me the set list that they'd been doing for the whole summer.
Did you have like a fake book or
no.
charts or anything?
No, but I got the CD. Jeff ran me over the CD, and I wrote quick charts. And maybe it wasn't the very next day. It was like 2 days later or something. I need you in Naturita, which is about by Delta. It's quite a drive. So
holy shit.
Yeah, it was 2 days. So I had just a short amount of time to listen and try to understand what was going on. And, you know, I had been doing some country gigs before that, so I was like, it's country. It's no problem. Cajun is not country. And I learned that later with Doug, you know, him scolding me and, you know.
Cajun is no Gentleman Deluxe.
No, yeah, it is no Gentleman Deluxe. We'll talk about that later.
So I wasn't given the gig. I was hired for this gig, kind of on a let's see how it goes basis. I get out to Naturita. I'm feeling really good about myself. I mean, I believe I had the CD and the entire way, you know, one of his live albums with pretty much the whole set, and got up on stage, and I think I pulled it off pretty good. And after this show, he said, "You did a great job." And Jeff said, "Fuck, he never compliments anybody. So I think you got the gig."
That's like a high honor then.
Yeah, and it did feel really good because, you know, I'm meeting this guy as we're walking on stage.
That's always a weird feeling, like meeting your bandmate when you walk out on stage.
Yeah, I've done that a number of times, but you know, he's a big stature dude, you know, country music, you know, and you know, he's 86 now, which is unreal.
Right.
And he was in his 70s at that time, and he was an intimidating cat, you know. But it was a fun show. There wasn't many people in the crowd. I mean, Delta, Colorado, it's a small town.
Right.
It's a perfect crowd for my first gig with that band. Maybe 200 people. You know, I'd have been freaked out if it would have been thousands.
Right.
You know, a couple years later, we played at the Jazz Fest. So that was a whole different gig.
Holy shit.
So I ended up scoring this gig with Doug, and and
you still play with him to this day, right?
I still do, but he
doesn't do it as much because
he's 86, so he's not doing much. I think he's in some pain. You know, his deal is this crazy, just out of control show. He throws a fiddle around. He doesn't play it up here. He plays it over here.
Right.
You know,
He plays it down low. Right. Yeah.
Right. And he had told me at one point we were flying to Lyon, France. We were doing a gig in Lyon, and he was in a lot of pain. And he said, "My hips are hurting real bad. And, you know, I don't want to do this if I can't give them the Doug Kershaw show. They come for the show. They like the music. This show is what's made me who I am today."
Right.
Because he just did this great show.
It's like going to see Jerry Lee Lewis without him kicking out the stool and like really banging on the piano.
It's just not the same. You know, the stage when it's Doug Kershaw, it's all the fellas in the band, and then you got to have a spotlight operator. because some of the songs, a lot of the songs are just a spot on him on a generally dark stage with him sawing on that fiddle with the rosin.
Just
Yeah, and it's like the smoke effect, super, super cool. And he's just animated and jumps around and,
And he's not doing that at 86.
plays a fiddle behind his neck. He's trying, and he still puts on a damn good show.
He's like the Jimi Hendrix of Cajun fiddle, just like thrashing up there.
Yes, he absolutely is.
That's
cool.
That's
what he's known. That his live performance is what he's known for. His studio albums, they're okay. They're a little cheesy.
Right.
There's some filler, but his live albums are just super, super amazing. So I got to travel a ton with Doug. I mean, I traveled a lot for years with him, and we were in his van, and we were doing long runs at casinos.
Right.
Casinos all over the country. We would do 5.
So this is your first real touring that you're doing.
This is my first real tour.
Out with Doug Kershaw.
Right.
How long?
Routed tours, usually no longer than 2 weeks would be the longest.
Okay.
Because he wanted to.
How many times a year? I guess what I'm asking is how much out of the year are you gone touring while trying to run a bar and expecting a child?
My first 4 years were the busiest years with Doug. That was the lot of the gigs. I've done 10 gigs a year with him since, but at that time we were probably doing 50, 60 dates a year. Mm-hmm. And, routing to lots of small towns. And then, not really many bigger cities other than New Orleans. I remember one show, we didn't know this, but we drove all the way to New Orleans, played at the New Orleans Swamp Fest with Dr. John, and
fucking awesome.
We are trying to find out where our rooms are, and he was like, "No, we're not staying the night. We're going home. I got to be back in Denver." He lived in Greeley. I got to be back home.
Oh, so he lived here at the time.
He lived in Baton Rouge, and he's got a ranch in Lucerne, Colorado at the time.
So you guys went all the way down to New Orleans and then played the gig.
Played a show and drove home.
Holy shit.
It sucked.
I'll bet, dude. That's a long fucking drive.
And we were mad, and we're half the band's quitting, this is it, But I was still pretty hot on it. It was still pretty fun. I was a couple years into it. I was, getting a lot out of it. But yeah, that was hard. Oof. I've never done that before. I don't even know how many hours, 15, 18 hours? That's an endless amount of time. And we were driving. You didn't want
That's a day and a half of just driving. 16 hours out there, 16 hours back. Just a day and a half driving to go play for an hour and a half, something like that?
Yeah, it was crap. It was no good. Scooter Barnes was on that gig.
Oh, really?
The only gig he ever played with, our guitar player.
Playing guitar or what?
Yep. Our guitar player couldn't do that show. And later he was so stoked that he couldn't do that show because he heard about the drive. And Scooter jumped onto that show. That was his one and only time playing with us. But that was a tough one. But we played, lots of fun things. Casinos were a little rough. You'd do a 5-night run at a casino, and you'd do 2 shows in the Show Palace. You do 2 hour-and-a-half sets, usually about an hour break between them.
So you're just grinding every single night.
And you do the exact same set with maybe alternate the encores.
Right.
And you're living in a casino for anywhere from 5 to 7 days. I mean,
you don't know what time of day it is. No, you're eating from the buffet, just like...
I liked that at the time.
Right.
Because the food was always, at that time the food was great.
Right.
And I loved that Doug's deal was, we got you guys on the road, we're working hard driving, you always get your own room. So we always got our own room. We got solid scale pay. I mean, I was making good bucks.
Right.
So you'd have this room to yourself, which is cool, and you'd draw the curtains, and sleep a lot, get up, you'd have all day to do nothing.
Right.
Go to the buffet, maybe play some slots or something.
Right.
Try not to blow all your dough.
Right.
But so we did a lot of those. We did a lot of county fairs, and we did some really great international traveling in a lot of Canada.
Yeah, you said Lyon, France. Where else did you go in? Where all did you travel to when you were
up and down the French Riviera?
Oh my God.
Which is really neat.
So cool.
Not that we got to see the French Riviera, but we got to see some stuff from the car.
Right, and that's another, man, that's like the trade-off, right? It's like, you go out and you do we did a bus tour of Germany, and we're like, oh my God, dude, we made it. We're like doing a bus tour of Germany, but it's like, you're doing all the driving at night.
Yeah.
And you wake up in a different town, and you get up and you eat and you load in and you do sound check, and then
you gotta sleep sometime.
You gotta sleep and you're able to sleep at night on the bus, but I mean, we didn't even go out for that long when we were doing the bus tour in Germany, and just from playing every night, I was just tired. So, by the time we'd get done with sound check, I would need to get a nap to like rest my voice for the show, or you got to take time to do warm-ups, or you got to like write the set list, and you get up and you do your show, and then you're at the merch table all night, and I didn't drink at the time, but I still woke up feeling hungover just from being
so exhausted.
Screaming your head off every night, and it's like, I remember Oktoberfest was going on, and we were in Munich at the time, and a bunch of the people we were with all walked over to go see the festivities in Munich, and I just had no interest because I was so fucking exhausted. We saw some stuff, but I felt like we saw more when it was just us in a Sprinter van driving around Europe, not knowing what we were doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When you're doing it professionally like that, that's like the trade-off. It's like, be careful what you wish for, because you might get it. And then you get it, and it's like, oh my God, Andy's touring the French Riviera. And it's like, yeah, but, I'm working.
Yeah, I actually had to go to France on my own just so I could see France.
Right.
But still a great experience.
Amazing, right.
It's a free trip to a really cool place. And, you always get the good foods.
Oh, yeah.
But touring with a, national guy, everyone wants to make you a great dinner.
Right.
We play these small towns, and these 4-H groups bring you these great spreads and, things like that.
Oh, yeah, because of the type of music that you're playing. Like,
yeah. And you're playing to, old folks.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of pies.
Lots of pies, he
salads
says.
with French dressing.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of pies.
Lots and lots of fucking pies. So I want to know what's going on with the bar while all this is going on. What's going on with preparing for the arrival of your daughter when all this is going on? Like, how are you balancing that? Like, what's going on?
Well, daughter is probably, come at this point. I get to go to the hospital and see her, and it's amazing.
Right.
And Casey's mom's an angel, and she helped out a lot with the baby, which was great. This time period was definitely a blur.
Yeah,
it was definitely a tough time.
So much going on, and it was tough. Yeah.
And then the bar, I had some great people. One guy that was a dear friend of mine who I thought was great ended up not being so great, and letting him go. But I had enough good people to watch over the place while I was gone. And often I wasn't gone for very long.
Right. Like you said, you were only going for like 2 weeks at a time.
And that was the longest. So most of these were like, sometimes 3-day runs.
Like, I got to run out of town real quick. I'll be back.
Yeah, do two to three shows and come back. Sometimes one show and come back. We did some fly out things.
Right.
But we go to Washington, then Oregon, and then come back, things like that.
Right.
So I was always worried about the bar when I was gone, and things didn't always go so great when I was gone, but it ended up kind of being all right.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, and then I'm trying to be home with my family, trying to make a go of it with Casey, who I was still kind of just getting to know.
Right.
We had known each other very short amount of time before she was pregnant. I mean, having a baby with a complete stranger, that's a tough thing. But I couldn't have had a baby with a better complete stranger.
It ended up
wild,
working out.
Man.
Yeah.
That's really wild.
I mean, like, I have a lot of friends who, not that it was any sort of like one night stand scenario, but it was pretty close.
It was close enough.
It was real close. And
had it not been for the pregnancy, it might have easily just ended up being a fling.
I say that all the time. Nothing against Casey, because she was like, I definitely outkicked my coverage on her. And there's no doubt about it. But she stuck it through with me through all the bullshit.
She's pretty rad.
Yeah, and through, me chasing the dream of being a bar owner and this musician. But she loved the music part. She always supported that. I don't know if she loved the bar part.
Right.
I'm sure she didn't. God, I don't know why she would.
Right.
definitely not conducive to a relationship, especially if you don't have your act together.
Right.
Different scenario now.
Well, and the bar world is just rife with drama and peril, you know? Like, it's... You can be the best guy in the world, and if you're surrounded with booze and drugs and you haven't quite cultivated the maturity and the self-restraint that one needs to survive in a healthy relationship, you know, I mean, you can easily destroy a relationship. You know, even if you don't step out of the relationship, even if you're not a hopeless drunk or an addict, even, you know, just being gone, you know, lack of presence just because of what it takes to be around that, or bringing drama home, you know, those type of things, or the people that you're around, like a mother who is trying to build a nest and start a family doesn't want her kid being around, you know, some guy who's falling off his bar stool every night. You know,
Right.
Even if it's not her husband, she doesn't want that environment necessarily getting too close to her nest. You know what I mean?
And it does. I mean, yeah, you got this great pure scenario at home.
Right.
And then I'm going to, not that the bar was total debauchery. I mean,
No.
it served a super great purpose, and it was very
It wasn't like
positive
a biker bar or anything.
No, but you know, it's just a bar, and it's gonna
Right.
be what a bar is,
And it's where people go to do things in the dark.
sure.
You know?
And so I was kind of living a number of different lives here,
Right.
and wearing a lot of hats and trying to be a decent dad. And I don't think I was a great dad until a couple years after that.
Right.
It took me a while to learn to be a good dad. She taught me how to be a good dad.
Right.
So, you know, a couple years later, we find out she's pregnant again.
Right.
It was very well received. So was the first one.
Yeah, but you're more prepared at this point.
I'm more prepared, and I decided it's time to leave Cafe Zero.
Oh, so you decided. It wasn't something like you tried and failed.
It didn't fail.
You made the decision to pull out.
Yeah.
Wow.
I sold the bar, and I made a profit. I didn't get rich, but
I never knew that. I didn't know. Like, I guess I just assumed that it was difficult to sustain for you, so you let it go. But
it was super difficult to sustain, and I knew.
But not financially in terms of maintaining your home life.
No, I was able to pay the rent. Now, got great parents that were all, you know, they were chipping in.
Right.
Because they knew that I think they knew I was working hard and maybe struggling here and there, and they just wanted the best for their grandkids, my parents and her parents. So there was a few factors in me selling Cafe Zero. One was I was getting a lot of phone calls, people dropping by, people want to sell this place, which was strange.
Right.
And one thing, they were getting ready to rip up South Broadway.
Right.
And that worried me greatly.
Right.
I was gonna lose any street presence. It was just gonna be tough. And the biggest one, though, was having this baby. Like, man, I don't know if I can do two. I really got to get a job.
Right.
I got to make some steady income here.
And some benefits and some, you know, security.
Yeah, maybe some benefits. That'd be nice.
Maybe, yeah.
I didn't end up getting those, and so with my attorney, Big Joe Dawson, we put the bar up for sale on a website for, you know, commercial spaces and things like that. And I sold a turnkey business, put a price tag on it, enough to, you know, cover my debts and make some good profit and pay Big Joe. And it sold real quick.
And you walked away from it.
Yep, and I had a cash offer for it, and I walked away from it, and it was awesome. Took a couple weeks off, and then I went to work for Herman's Hideaway.
So that's when you went to work for Herman's.
Right.
Okay. See, I had the timeline wrong all along. I thought I met you at Herman's. Like, Dude, I was a drunk and a half. What can I say? I mean, my earliest memories of you were like, I was happy to see you behind the bar when we were playing a Herman's show.
Right.
You know, I knew Andy was going to be there. We're going to have a great conversation. We were going to get treated right, and, you know, that was going to get a buzz on and have a great time. And that was really during a time when I was feeling pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like, I was, and I think that that's something that that is missing from a lot of clubs is something that you did at Herman's, and something that the Three Kings guys did for years initially.
They did.
Was they had this philosophy of just like treating everybody like a celebrity, everybody who walks through the door, you know, treating them like you're happy to see them. And I feel like a lot of places have lost that ability. I mean, there's some people here and there, like, you know, we're getting ready to have Tony Mason on the show. You know, I'm really bummed that he's moving, because as far as, you know, as far as promoters that are higher up, like he is the cream of the crop.
He's been very good.
I think a lot of us are really concerned about that, you know.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
for good reason.
Well, I mean, you know, like, you know, I love Danny Sachs, I love Ricky Aston, you know, Scott Campbell. Those people have all been very good to us. But something about Tony. It was like he worked for this bigger company, but he has the ethics of like the small local club.
Yeah.
Well, he started out doing all that local stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So
I'm really
where
excited.
that's where he came from. You know,
He was at Herman's.
Tony Mason was at
Yeah.
Herman's?
He was.
I didn't know that.
Yep, he was at Herman's right after I left and did the Oriental. So
That is something, and so I think we can move into talking about the Oriental. That is something that I love about the Oriental, and that I think is really cool, is that you guys are one of very few independently owned and operated music venues that still gets major national and international acts. Like you guys, like I remember playing the Oriental Theater when I was a kid. I remember seeing like a production of Kiss Me Kate at the Oriental Theater when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I remember playing shows on that stage under a variety of different owners.
Yeah.
You know,
had a lot of changes.
A ton of changes.
Kind of like the Gothic Theater before Steve Schulk went in and redid it.
Right.
A lot of our bands played those rooms.
Right. And one of the things, like, I can say for sure that the Oriental is my favorite venue in town. The only reason we don't play the Oriental more is because it's so huge and we have zero possibility of getting...
Yeah, it's hard. It's a big space.
It's a huge space. So it's like, even though I know I could hit you up and get the room, you know, far enough in advance, even though I know that I could hit you or Peter Orr up, and if I bid on 5 shows, I could probably get us on 2 or 3 of those 5 shows. It's really hard to get bodies into that room. And so, but all that being said, I love playing at the Oriental above any other venue in town, especially since you guys have like done the upgrades and the remodel.
Better.
Like you so tell me a little bit about how you end up becoming a part of that theater.
Okay.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, so yeah, I'd done a couple years at Herman's, and I was just thinking, like, am I ready to do this again? Am I ready to do another place on my own? I'm not sure. And I kind of got word from some people that the Oriental Theater needed some help, or maybe it was for sale. And
Was this when there was that period of time when all of us tried to work there?
Right.
Then that there was like 6 people who were trying to own the Oriental. Like, were you a part of that initially, or did you come in after the fact? Like,
I came in after that, and that's probably why I came in.
Okay, so that's probably what it was. Is it had gone up for sale, and I'm sure you heard about that, but then it was like really struggling, and they were...
I knew it was for sale. I knew it had been for sale. I knew that someone bought it from the Three Kings guys.
Right, because the Three Kings guys ran it for a little while.
Yeah, and they had a hard time with it.
Because it's a hard...
Understandably so, because it's
hard to
room.
sustain, yeah.
I had gotten word that the place was in trouble, that there was some jokers trying to take it over. No, that's not really the word.
Jerry Cass.
But no. I just had heard that maybe that they were, whatever current ownership it was under, wasn't going to be able to pull it off.
Right.
Just from some people I know. So I kind of worked my way in, didn't push my way in, but became available and worked a way to buy the theater with Scott LaBarbera.
Okay, so now how long, because I just feel like Scott has always been a part of that place.
Scott owned the theater before Three Kings, and he sold it to Three Kings.
Oh, and then got together with you and bought it back from them.
More or less. Yeah, it's a much deeper, more crazier story.
Right, I'm sure it's a huge long story.
There was some upset people, and but it all worked out the way it should.
Right.
And then Scott and I kind of started operating the place again, and the only way I was able to do it is because Scott LaBarbera had great knowledge of that place, and he had strong knowledge of booking and knew the neighborhood, and he worked his ass off to get that place originated in the first place into the new Oriental Theater.
Right.
So we took our it took 3 years just even make a buck.
Right.
I mean, the place was hemorrhaging money.
Oh, yeah.
It was hard to keep the power on. It was hard to keep anything maintained. We leased our sound system from Brett Dowling, and we could barely pay him.
Well, and the ceiling collapsed
and
at
the
one
ceiling
point.
collapsed.
While you were playing with Doug Kershaw.
Doug Kershaw, right. And which was just yet one more setback of the setbacks that we had at that theater. And, we were closed for 3 weeks, and if it wasn't for a contractor friend of mine basically putting jobs on hold and coming in and building scaffolding and fixing that ceiling and letting us pay him off over 4 years.
Right.
We never would have opened up. I mean,
the calendar was dark a lot. I remember that.
The calendar was dark, but of course that period of time after the ceiling fell, we had this killer looking calendar, which was it was always, how are we gonna pay the rent this month?
Right.
How are we gonna pay the bills? I mean, the nut on that place is no joke. It's a big 15,000 plus square foot place built in the early 1900s. And, it's
an old ass building.
It's an old building. It takes a lot of money.
Like it was like an old vaudeville theater, right?
Movies and everything.
Right. So, the talkie pictures.
Right. Yeah.
So were you an owner when Jerry and Fatty and Tony and Ty and I were staying in the house on Tennyson,
yes,
and we're getting our power and our heat shut off, and we're going over and sleeping.
Yeah, in the green rooms and stuff.
Yeah, sleeping in there on nights just so that we could stay warm and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's kind of when I came in.
Yeah. That's just
and that was a tough time for the theater. It was frustrating for everybody involved.
Right.
And with a place like that, just takes a whole lot more than just a handful of people that really want it to
with
succeed.
Good intentions, right?
Yeah, it took us years to get all the right staff into place, and get a great manager to run the place, and get real talent buyers to come in. I mean, I book bands and I book private events and films and tours and things like that, but I'm not a professional talent buyer.
Right. Well, when Peter Orr came in, that's when you guys started getting really huge shows.
We were getting the big shows that you know of.
Right.
Before that, we had Mark Sundemeyer, who was getting the big shows. Oh,
that's right. Mark Sundemeyer.
These people
Sorry,
know
how could I forget? Yeah.
And Mark did a stellar job for us. And he's got a certain niche of bands, and
he brought Mickey Hart in, right?
No, that was actually us.
Right on. Is that just from contacts that you had?
That was through Jay Bianchi.
Oh, through Jay Bianchi. Right on.
And Jay also brought threw a lot of great acts our way for you. It's taken an army of people to make it so that place can even be open right now. We do events with Swallow Hill, and they promote shows in the venue, which is stellar for us. AEG has promoted shows in the venue. Live Nation has done a few shows in the theater. We rent the space to, we've had to become very creative with our content.
Right.
We're not just bands. We have to be everything.
Yeah, film festivals and
so we have the benefit
community events
of this great movie screen and great projector. So we do these great film festivals, which are great, and comedy shows and weddings and political fundraisers and neighborhood fundraisers.
I've been to a good Mortified show or two there.
Yeah, Mortified, things like that.
Yeah.
What's Mortified? Oh, that's that spoken
podcast.
Oh, the podcast. Yeah. Where people get up and they tell stories.
They read from their high school journals.
Oh,
it's fucking great.
Yeah, it is great. So it's that kind of creative content that has really been our success.
Right.
If we just thought we were going to, I never got into it thinking we were going to be doing stuff like that.
Right.
I thought this was going to be just a total rock and roll venue.
You just have to fill the calendar.
But the best part about things like Mortified and all these, we do lots of big podcasts, and the best part is those are the easiest production days possible.
It's like 4 microphones. And,
no one's
right.
I don't have the whole crew getting there at noon and, setting up lights and cues and, them touring bands bringing their own board in and their own engineers and people just stepping all over the venue for an entire day, and tour buses, where are we going to park those,
right,
and all this shit. We've got these great events that make such a small footprint in production-wise, but such a huge footprint fan-wise.
Right.
And sell, hundreds and hundreds of tickets and sell lots of these.
Podcasts are just like huge for getting live audiences now, just like nationwide.
They're
it's
massive.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's so
amazing.
Cool. And we've done just a ton of them. These podcasts that are just taken off. It's been great. Weddings and things for the neighborhood. School fundraisers, and we don't discriminate as long as it's a reasonable event.
You guys have done some of the Fish Tour simulcasts too, right? Yeah.
So years ago, when we had a lot more open dates on the calendar, I found out Fish would do these webcasts, these live streams. So I said, "Shit, let's try it."
Right.
So I think the first 2 or 3 we did, 300-400 people were showing up for these things. It was incredible.
Just to watch a live stream
on the huge screen with the big sound. Yeah, just to be among like-minded people.
That's so crazy.
And then when Grateful Dead did the Fare Thee Well tour with a lot of the original members got together, I think we did 2 nights of those, and those were like sellouts.
For live streams on a screen with a big system.
Yeah, and it was so great because it costs us so little we don't charge anyone to come in. It's free. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, for those kind of things.
So you make it all off your bar business.
All off the bar.
And you've got dude, your bar is like the size of this table.
We rip drinks out of it.
Oh yeah, I know you do.
I mean, we've got
fast.
We've got 3 to 4 bars in the venue, depending.
Right. But the main lobby bar is just like really just small.
Yeah, it's the size of this room.
Yeah, for sure.
But I always feel like that's why it works.
Right.
It's such a small space, small, short, arm length to grab almost anything you need.
Right.
And we pack 3 great people behind that bar, and we just move fast because we got to sell those drinks.
Dude, so I've started doing 1 night a week at the other Fire on the Mountain location, and they have a 2-person bar over there. Like it's a bigger bar, and the thing I don't like about it is I have to walk further to get stuff. You know what I mean? Like
at Herman's, I used to have to.
Oh, yeah.
Someone asked for a Miller Lite, and you got to rip to the other side past 3 other bartenders, and it would take a bigger bar staff to manage one really.
It's like that
bar.
old arcade game Tapper. You know what I mean?
Right? Yeah.
You got to run up and down.
It's so true.
Bar.
Yeah. Pour the drop, put it down, take the money.
Go run over and go grab the thing and back and forth.
We stopped talking about it, but for years we were like, okay, we're gonna build the bar in the venue, inside the venue. Half in the venue and half in the lobby.
Oh, that'd be neat.
It would be neat, but one super awesome thing about the theater is we've got this lobby. It's like a place of refuge.
Right.
So if you want to get away from the music, you got this pretty substantial sized lobby to hang out in.
It's a cool place to hang out too.
Yeah.
And it's a good one of the things I really like is that whenever we've done a show, like even when we did the canceled Hank Von Hell show, we did okay. For a local band bringing people in, we did okay.
Yeah, it was a good show.
And the thing that I liked about that is, and the thing that I've liked about a lot of the shows you do is you do the show and you have the showroom and you do all that stuff, and then you have like this reception area.
Yes.
Where there's not a ton of noise, and you're like, it's almost like, it reminds me of like when I was a theater student, and like you would do your play and then come out after the play and you're in the lobby afterwards and you're like doing the meet and greet and shaking hands and talking.
Well, it keeps people in the venue too. Like,
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
It does keep people in the venue.
Yeah.
And one other awesome thing is like it contains sometimes that loud bar noise and ruckus in the lobby, so the venue can be, it's just music.
Right.
There's not big, lights over this bar and people, cash register sounds or people barking drink orders out.
Yeah.
I was at the Bluebird a few weeks ago, and I love the Bluebird.
Yeah, it's a great theater, but you're having to scream over whatever band is playing.
And I was there to see Yola, and it was just incredible show. If you haven't heard Yola, you need to get hip. She is one of my favorites. But so her opening act, sold out show. Her opening act, can't remember her name, but she was playing the banjo. She's real quiet, and the bar was so loud and I was near the back, and all you could hear was the bar the whole time. It was so distracting. But what are you gonna do?
Right.
The bar's gonna be loud. But I was there with Scott LaBarbera, and I was like, man, this is so loud back here. Like, that's one awesome thing about the theater is like, man, we got this separate space for the bar. So we scratched that idea.
Right.
We do so many films and comedy shows. You can't, during a comedy show, man, it's comedy.
Dude, they had to shut down the pinball machines at Three Kings during the open mics just because people would come in, some comics up there trying to work out material, and then you hear this like gung 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 gung.
Yeah. I think that maybe, and I don't know, but
Jones scoring.
I've never seen comedy shows at the Bluebird or Gothic. I'm sure they've had them, but that would be really distracting when the comics on stage, and you go to Paramount, the bar's out, and there's really substantial lobby.
You sit down in your seat, you watch the show like you're expected. Like, I saw David Cross there, and like people were yelling shit, and it stood out, and it was annoying, and of course David Cross.
Where'd you see him at?
At the Paramount.
Okay.
And he knows how to work hecklers, you know what I mean?
I bet he does.
If it was at a place like the Bluebird Theater, people would be yelling shit the whole time. No one's gonna be quiet out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is something that's really cool about the Oriental is, and you go to a place like, let's say like Larimer Lounge or like the Old Bender's Tavern, it's a detriment having the showroom in another room. But something about the Oriental, it works. It's like, it's not overbearing to hang out in the showroom. Like, it's just that perfect blend of like, you can hang out, you can watch the show, you're not going to feel overwhelmed. It's not going to just like blow you out of the room. But you also have that refuge, like you said, where you can like go to the front of the building and hang out, and you can grab a drink and socialize.
There's smaller bars there too. You can go to the back of the venue and go to that small bar over there to the right hand side or whatever.
And we
built a beer.
We built a really awesome, legit bar on the balcony.
Dude, I love the balcony there. Like, I wish that we could draw enough to fill that balcony. Just because that is like to fill the room and the balcony. Just
it feels good playing on that stage when the main floor is packed, and that it's from a musician standpoint. I've been able to do it a few times, and as an owner, been able to like walk up on that balcony. Now that we have the bar up there, like it's kind of tiered up, and I stand there and I can see the whole place, and man, it feels good.
It's cool, dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's like, I remember when we played with Ace Frehley, it was like, man, that show probably helped cement things with me and Sarah, because we had like just started dating at that point. Then she came to the Ace Frehley show, and it's just like we're sitting up in the balcony, watching the show and just sitting in those old, velvet seats and just relaxing and having this good time and like walking around and shaking hands.
And you were a total rock star that night.
Dude, it was a lot of fun. You know what I mean? So like that. Like, just something about the vibe of the place. It just really works. Something that just popped into my head. You remember that when we did the White Fudge gig for that? It was like medical weed had just happened, and White Fudge got offered that gig. It was some
dispensary or something?
It was some dispensary thing. It was a private event where they were allowed to smoke inside, and we're up on stage playing.
We're never allowed to smoke inside.
Well, we were. People were turning a blind eye.
Sure, of course.
And they had the crowd just had like dab rigs set up, and we're smoking. And I remember being on stage during that show and just looking out, and there's just like this haze, like
bad.
Fog on the moors, just like rolling in, and we would play and hear almost nothing from the crowd, and we're like, did we play like shit? What's going on? And then like go down off the stage and out into the crowd, and there's just these people with like bloodshot eyes, just like, "Hey man, that was amazing. You guys are so good."
Hey, you were one of the guys on stage, right? That sounded really good.
Yeah.
Whoa, you were up there, and now you're down here. What the fuck?
We did a lot of weed events back then.
Oh yeah,
because we weren't necessarily supposed to be, but no one cared.
you guys,
And those helped us for a long time.
you didn't have as much regulation as like a place like an AEG or Live Nation.
Well, no one really did. The regulation didn't come till the legalization.
Oh yeah,
So, like, I'm not saying we were supposed to be doing it, but we did it.
right.
You know, we had, the 420 events, and we did
You guys did a cannabis cup there too, didn't you?
we did a cannabis cup, and we did this bake-off thing where they brought these ovens on stage. It was so stupid.
What?
It was horrible. It was the worst event ever, but people showed up. The promoter totally ripped us on the rent. But once they legalized marijuana recreationally,
Right.
all the rules changed. And we got a letter in the mail
Right.
basically saying, if there's any smoking in the venue, you're in violation of your liquor license.
What about
That's
that?
part of the Colorado Clean Air.
What about that event you did with Seth Rogen? Didn't you guys do some like
Right.
legal smoke out event with Seth Rogen?
So we did the world premiere of the movie The Interview.
Right.
Sony Pictures held it at the theater.
Right.
It was supposed to be in a bunch of different theaters all over the country. But
Which is a cool thing that a lot of independent filmmakers are doing, is they do like the movie tour. You know what I mean? Like Kevin Smith is just did that with the new Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back,
Right,
or
right,
whatever it
yeah.
was. Jay and Silent Bob reboot, whatever it is. To like extend the life of the release, they go on a tour of the movie. So it was supposed to be at multiple theaters around the country, and that didn't happen.
Alamos, and bigger chains, AMC theaters and things like that.
Right.
But it was a political thing. It was the North Korea thing, and
Right, because that's what the movie was about.
and so these theaters were worried that something bad could happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was a legitimate concern.
Yeah, so theaters were pulling out of this.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So somebody sent a tweet to Seth Rogen, Sony Pictures, saying, Oriental Theater is not afraid of terrorists.
Right.
Come bring your film here, something like that.
Right.
And Sony Pictures called us up and rented the room.
No
and
way.
Yeah, so we had the world premiere, the only premiere showing of The Interview, and Seth Rogen came in.
Wow.
Huh.
But his deal was, I want to smoke weed on stage. And we were like, you can't smoke, because this was like very fresh. We're like, we can't allow it. He's like, I don't care, I'll pay the fine. 10,000, 20,000, I'll pay the fine. And we're like, man, we get a fine now, you pay it. We're on the grid. We're in trouble. Our license is at risk. I mean,
Right. It's beyond that.
This is not a good idea.
Yeah, it goes beyond just one infraction.
And he doesn't care. He's not seeing it that way. He doesn't give a shit about us. He wanted to do a show the way he wanted to do it. And smoking in the green room. Well, he ended up doing the show. It was great. A lot of people showed up. He came up to me at the bar and give me a bottle of tequila. And I gave him rot gut tequila, and he was walking around pouring it in people's mouths, and it was fun. A lot of people, I don't think the movie was very good.
I remember I saw The Interview. It was okay. It's definitely
I
not.
think it's not one of his best works. I
Right.
would say, but
I mean,
but it's still. I got
it's Seth Rogen and James Franco.
We still have the big stand-up, the movie theater stand-up in one of the.
What was the most rewarding event in your time as an owner of that theater? Like, what was the event you were most proud of?
Maybe Leon Russell.
Oh, that's right. You did Leon Russell.
Yeah, we did.
And it was shortly before he passed away, right?
Right, yeah. We'd had him a couple times, and we actually had him on the books for, the next year, but he did pass away. But yeah, that was...
Because you were a big fan at the time.
Massive Leon Russell fan.
Yeah.
He also played a lot with Doug Kershaw.
Right.
So I just always thought Leon was great. So that was one of those, like, this is a dream to have him here. It was just such a special night, and he was so good. That was just such a stellar show. Ace Frehley was another one of those. That was like childhood. Andy was like so stoked to have Ace Frehley from Kiss here.
I've probably mentioned.
Sorry,
it.
I missed that. But Aaron's he's almost convinced me that it's better just to have not been at that show.
I would disagree.
No. Here's okay, and I've maybe I gave the wrong impression because it was a bittersweet thing for me. On one hand, I was annoyed with the attitude. I was annoyed with him being kind of aloof. I didn't like the fact that he was charging $500 to sign your guitar.
So it was a business thing more than a performance.
Oh, it's business,
right? And
I get that.
I didn't like that we were barred from the backstage area, and I didn't like that we didn't get to meet him, and I didn't like that we were playing on this like little 1-foot strip of stage, and all of that annoyed me. But I walked around in the fact that neither he nor his band came out, and the crowd was there and they wanted to meet somebody. The crowd was super generous to us. We sold a ton of merch. We had a great performance. We made a lot of new fans at that show.
Guys killed it.
We had a ton of fun. We got to play with a fucking rock and roll legend. And probably the biggest thing that was redemptive for me was watching the show. I was standing there in the crowd watching him play all his Kiss stuff, all his Frehley's Comet stuff, all his, all his solo stuff. Everything from Detroit Rock City to Back in the New York Groove and all these, like he played everything you could want to hear that was one of his songs. And I'm like watching him play the lead to Detroit Rock City, and the hair on the back of my neck is standing on end. And that I was like, you know what? There aren't a lot of people left over from those arena rock days. And my experience has been is that many of them, I won't say most, but many of the people from that era are very bitter and resentful of what has happened to them.
Yeah, he feels like he got the short end of the stick with Kiss, and maybe he deserved a lot of it. He definitely got kind of screwed.
He got screwed, but he also brought a lot of it on himself.
Sure.
And if you hear Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, who I'm not fans of, but in their language, he squandered his gift is basically the way that they talk about it.
I can't remember. Did you read his book?
Which one? I have Me Inc. and I read like a quarter of Me Inc. and
Ace Frehley's book.
Oh, Ace Frehley's book?
Yeah.
No, I haven't read it.
It's so fucking good. You really need to read it.
No, and I mean that's the thing is it's like I walked away from it, and I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression of my experience, Gordo, because what happened and what I intended to convey was that I started out kind of rolling my eyes and feeling annoyed with the guy and thinking he was big timing everybody. But then by the end of it, like enough positivity had come out of it, and I've gotten older and I've come to realize that these people are products of their time. And if I was playing gigantic arenas, and, it's easy for us in the future to look back and be like, well, you should have seen it coming. Music's cyclical, and, of course you're not going to be selling out arenas forever. But, they didn't. And they didn't have the internet, and rock and roll was pretty young at that point.
Yeah, it was.
Rock and roll was only 20 years old at the point that Kiss was touring the world and on fucking kids' lunchboxes and shit. And then he's playing a 700-seat theater in Denver, Colorado, while I'm running around in a fucking red banana hammock, acting like an asshole,
And he was.
Yeah.
It was good.
But if the show won you over in the end, then that's the only thing that matters.
That's the thing. The show won me over in the end, and even much later on, I was, and I think I've mentioned this before, when I went on the Monsters of Rock cruise, I was a little bummed on the attitude of some of the people on the Monsters of Rock cruise, but I was also really inspired by the handful of those entertainers who did not let it take the joy out of it for him. People like Doro Pesht or Uli John Roth. You guys had Uli John Roth at the theater.
We did, yeah. And he was a We had him twice, and he was like, we loved him. He was so cool. He hung out with us after the show.
Uli is so cool. I got a picture with him, and Sarah introduced me to the Scorpions albums that he was on, and like I went to the Q&A that he did, and I just was like, I didn't even really know who he was before I went on that cruise.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. Not jaded.
Super cool. Not jaded.
Yeah.
Kip Winger's another one who isn't jaded. Todd Latour from Queensryche was a very sweet guy. Doro Pesch, above all, was probably the sweetest person that I met on that whole thing.
That's cool.
My mom and dad adore Rick Allen from Def Leppard. They bought a few of his paintings. Like, they've had dinner with him and just think he's a delightful man. What's his name? Butch from Saxon. They adore him. Like there are some of them. People like Sebastian Bach, for example, or Jason McMasters from Broken Teeth and Dangerous Toys seemed a little bitter and jaded. There's a handful of them who really, you can tell, feel disappointed and like they got ripped off a little bit.
Yeah, I had heard that about Sebastian Bach, but he came and put on a stellar show.
That's right. You guys had him at the theater.
Yeah, and the staff said he was great, and man, he gave it to the crowd, and they loved it.
I guess it just must be if he's drinking, it's just not super great. Because the experience that I had with him, he was super drunk. I can imagine that. But it all depends on the day you catch people.
I try not to meet too many of these guys. I'm kind of these days I just let my production staff deal with it. There's a few people that I'd be stoked to meet.
Right.
So Ace was one of them.
We got to meet Ace.
We had him twice. We had Ace twice.
Yeah.
Both times, same deal. Went in the tour bus. But the first time I was super stoked because I had stuff for him to sign.
Right.
Stuff from when I was a kid.
Right.
I still have all my old Kiss stuff, my trading cards and fanzines and the action figures and the stage and the guitars. But I had some trading cards for him to sign, ones with a little pinhole because I used to put them on my wall.
Yeah.
So he was so cool. He signed everything. He's like, I hear you're the owner. This is a great place. He was real nice. Wasn't like super endearing or anything, but he gave us his time on his bus, and I thought that was really cool.
His crew was really cool too. His crew was very complimentary of us, and his crew gave us business cards, and they're like, hey, when you guys get to the next level, and you need a crew, hit us up.
Yeah, man, always looking for work because their job's temporary too.
Right, exactly. And they were super cool, and he was charismatic as fuck on stage. And I also get it that we're the opening band. You know what I mean? And I've played with a lot of these guys where, the last thing they want after they get off stage, like we did, I mentioned it before, we did the Dio Disciples show at Herman's.
Right.
And these are guys that used to share the stage with fucking
Dio,
Ronnie.
Yeah.
And they're playing at Herman's with, again, the guy running around in the red jumpsuit and the fucking...
So were they cool?
They slammed the door in our face when we came down to the green room and had us ejected from the green room. But
nice.
But and we didn't like it. But in all fairness, the last thing those guys want after they get off stage is for us to come down with our hands out, just like
Yeah, they don't want that.
They don't want it.
I understand that.
I understand it. It's disappointing, and it's like
it's kind of like when I close the theater at night. When we close. And the band is still partying in the green room, we just want them to go.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. Just beat it.
It's time to go.
No, seriously. Like,
I know.
We're tired. Like, you're cool. It's a great show. Pack it up and go.
Yeah.
We've been working all night. You should be wanting to do that too.
Right.
Green room curfew's at midnight.
Right.
It's 12:30.
Right.
Let's
time to hit the bricks, buddy.
Time to hit the bricks. Get in that Sprinter and head on down the road.
Oh, man.
I don't know. I think that when you're excited to play shows and you hook up with another band, it's they have a different attitude about where they are and what they're doing. It can be rough. It can be a rough, because and that's one of the main reasons I'm not super big on meeting people that we play with sometimes. It's just like, that's all right.
You maybe don't want to get disappointed, or as you get a little older too, you just you don't care quite as much. There's certain people in your life that are icons.
Yeah.
You gotta meet.
Yeah.
We got Todd Rundgren, Leon Russell. Those are guys I really wanted to meet. There's a lot of these younger bands that I totally dig, but I don't care if I meet them. You know, Black Flag was, Jill Biafra there. Great. Those guys are super cool. They meant something to me when I was younger, but now I was just stoked they played, and that was my experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, you still met Greg Ginn and everything, right?
Right, yeah. And he was super nice. He was actually super accessible, and actually went out and was talking to people at the end of the night that were outside smoking.
I get, I mean, what a lot of it is it's when you're in a smaller band, especially a smaller band that's been working as long as we have, there's this part of you that is like, Patton Oswalt has that bit about like the girl who blows Michael Damian by the tilt-a-whirl and is like, Michael Damian's gonna take me out of this town, Mom. You'll see. Like, there's this when you're in a smaller band, you have this fantasy of blowing Michael Damian. No, when you're in the smaller band and you're working real hard and you look up to these people who are these icons, these characters, there's this part of you that like has heard the stories about, oh yeah, we opened for so-and-so and they watched us and they went, you're pretty good, and they took us on the road, and that was the beginning of it. Right.
Maybe it did happen.
Maybe it did happen. But like we had, when we had Andrew Novick on here, he's talking about how like Gibby Haynes and the Butthole Surfers are watching Warlock Pinchers and like becoming fans.
Well, it's
and
Warlock Pinchers.
Right.
I mean,
I know.
Pretty special.
I know. They're pretty special. But when you play with the band, there's that part of you that like is hoping that they'll see you and think, these guys have something special. I'm going to do something for them. I'm gonna at the very least, I'm gonna be like, hey, let's hang out. Let's talk. Let's talk about your career. Let's just shoot the shit, and you kind of want that to happen. You want them to think you're cool.
Yeah, of course you do.
And when they treat you like you're somewhere between the guy outside trying to get enough money for a 40 and the dude who sweeps up at the end of the night, like if they kind of put you somewhere between there as the opening act, like that's hurtful.
Really, you're just on their stage, entangled in their gear,
right,
in their way,
right.
Just ready for you to go so they can get up and play, and they can get on the bus,
right,
and go home.
Right.
Unless you can get them really good weed in Kansas, and then it's a completely different situation.
Now, who did that happen with?
I don't know if I should say.
No, you've said it on an episode before.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
It's Junior Brown.
Oh, it was Junior Brown.
But yeah,
cool.
but he just like, we were all super stoked to be opening for him, my bluegrass band out there, and he just wouldn't give us the time of day at all. No green room shenanigans, nothing going on there, barred from hanging out in there, but then word came out that he was looking for something, and we knew where to get it.
Oh, I know. You know what story it was? Is that you told the story about when Mike Patton came through with some band. It was like with Mr. Bungle or something like that.
Yeah, I was on mushrooms.
And you're like, I've got an XLR cable at my house.
That was the most awkward meeting of one of the people that I look up to most in the world.
What an opportunity.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Blew it.
Oh, dude. He was in the back of an empty U-Haul truck, just a couple cables in his hand. And
just there.
And I was just completely peaking on mushrooms, and I just happened to walk by this U-Haul, like just a couple, just a few doors down from the venue, and just like, my buddy and I were like, was that Mike Patton in the back of that U-Haul? And so we kind of went back, and sure enough, he's just hanging out, trying to find some cables, and I was like, hey man, what are you doing in there? It's like, we're a 40 channel live band, we need more XLR cables. Like, I've got XLR cables at my house, man. He's just like, yeah, I think we got it covered. It's cool. And then my buddy's just kind of pulling on my sleeve.
He's like, how'd you get back here?
Let's just
exactly.
Yeah, let's just get out of here, man.
It's like it's you you get tapped to go play with a legend like Doug Kershaw, right? Like it's like that's a huge thing. You know, that's a big deal. That's something that you can like put in your hat for the rest of your career. And it's like you end up playing with some of these bands and you're just hoping that they'll see you and consider you a contemporary and not just...
But that's not really why you're doing it. I mean...
It's not why I'm doing it. It's not the main reason for it, but it's definitely something that, like... You know, it's definitely something that I've hoped for.
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you want that? But you do it because it gets your name on a cool bill.
Right.
You know, it looks good that you played with Ace Frehley or all these Steel Panther, all these awesome bands that you guys have played with. That's good. That's career boosting stuff. That's why
resume builders.
Resume builders.
Right.
That's why you do it for so little pay. That's why one reason the venues can get away with giving you so little pay. We can get to that too if you want.
Right.
And you do it to get in front of a bunch of new people that would never come see MF Ruckus otherwise.
Right.
And then your current fans like get to see you open up for Steel Panther. I mean, it's bragging rights. It's super cool.
Right.
And it is good for your career.
Yeah. No, that I mean, and shows like that. I mean, they were huge, and I still see people when. You know, when we do like another like support slot, they go, "Hey, I saw you guys with Steel Panther. I saw you guys with Ace Frehley, or I saw you guys with Dio Disciples," and I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah,
I love your stuff. That feels really good.
That means something. Like,
that's even bigger.
White Fudge has done all these. We've done a lot of these openers for these national acts, and half the time I think we Slick Rick and we blow them off the stage.
Have you heard the bootleg of that show, by the way?
No.
Dude, I released it on the Ruckus page. Like, our set from that show is pretty fucking good.
Yeah, I think we were good that night.
James Freeman recorded it.
And Slick Rick really wasn't very good.
He was bad, man. It was really sad. I felt bad because yeah, it was really bad.
It was a massive buzzkill.
Oh man.
You know, he was touring because he needed the money. I mean, you know, you see those guys who are touring because they need the money. And I feel like nostalgia hip-hop acts, they have an even harder time than, like, the nostalgia rock and roll acts. Like, when we played with Naughty by Nature, it's like, those guys at one point had, like, #1 song after #1 song on the radio. Like, dude, like, being a rap star is, like... bigger than being a rock star by an order of magnitude. Like, it is enormous. You're talking about fucking like a car made of solid gold and just like hot chicks all over you, all like insane, like just like opulence. You know what I mean? Like a degree of wealth that is beyond one's imagination.
Yeah,
gold in your teeth.
Yeah, dude. And I mean. Yeah. And then to have to play with White Fudge, you know what I mean? Like when we played with the Sugar Hill Gang, you know, those guys were one of the, like they obviously weren't one of the first rap acts ever, but they were definitely...
They're part of the founding fathers.
Oh yeah,
they were a big part
of the beginning.
Well, and they brought it to the mainstream. They brought it to the major market. You know, and they're playing the Oriental Theater with a bunch of fucking dorks, dorky white dudes covered in tattoos singing about their penises and
hey, crowd liked it.
Oh man, they had a good time.
I was worried that wasn't going to be the right fit. I've never been worried before about one of our shows. I was on that one, and that one was great.
One was fun.
People loved it.
That was a blast.
Well, White Fudge did a lot of those great shows.
Yeah.
And
Vanilla Ice
actually really did like us.
Yeah.
We loved Jerry because Jerry ended up being Ice's hype man, and I think he
dressed like a clown and sprayed water everywhere.
You know.
Well, Vanilla Ice, out of the handful of big time celebrities that we've met over the years, Vanilla Ice is definitely in the top 5 like friendliest people.
Yeah, he was cool.
Met. He was a very nice man.
Yeah, he was nice.
You know, I think he knows who he is. I think he's, doing the shtick because it pays him pretty well still, and he's got to do the thing. I think, didn't Garrett work for Vanilla Ice at one point? Your production manager?
James Martinez did.
That's right.
And then through James, Garrett did a number of shows with but he was living in Highlands Ranch.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So he had that Fix and Flip TV show.
Yeah. Rob's House or whatever it was called.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think he was maybe living in one of the houses he's flipping, or he was just living in Highlands Ranch. So he's pretty accessible in Denver for a while. Mm-hmm. So that period of time, he played a lot of shows. He's playing at Lodo's.
Right.
You know, for the bros.
I remember that he did at Lodo's.
Yeah. But I mean, they were like 1,000 people showing up.
Right.
You know, they spending big money for one song.
Right.
But it was a great show. Remember he got up and played drums?
Oh, yeah.
He was a great musician.
He was DJing, too. He got up and just did some of his EDM shit. And he's like,
I don't remember Naughty by Nature being all that awesome.
No. In fact, it was a very poorly attended show from my recollection.
Remember Ice, how packed it was?
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't fit another person.
It was completely sold out.
That was a Grizzly Rock.
Yeah.
Short-lived.
Yeah.
And
very cool venue, though.
Yeah, they did a good job. And then, Naughty by Nature was really, really poorly attended.
Yeah, it was bad. I think that show might have been part of what shut down the Grizzly Rock, because I'm sure their guarantee was enormous.
Well, maybe 10, 15 grand, but that could sink you if you don't have the dough.
Right.
It's a lot of money to lose.
Yeah,
We've lost a lot of money on shows.
Yeah.
And then, we have enough winners that they make up for those losers.
Right.
But it's always such a tight margin.
Right.
For us with buying shows. I mean, we are not getting rich over there.
Right.
We depend on ticket sales to pay the bands, and often we depend on bar sales to pay the bands.
Right.
These tours are not cheap, and production is not cheap. There's so much staffing and advertising and behind the scenes costs to putting on a show.
And just to be clear, you still have 2 day jobs, right? In addition to working the Oriental.
One, I own another company.
Oh, okay. So you're not doing Comcast anymore.
No,
you're just doing.
That's been six years since I
wasn't sure if you were or not, because I just knew you were doing a lot of things all at once.
I've always had to do other jobs. I did this Comcast gig for a while just so I could pay my mortgage while the theater was just trying.
While you're trying to get it off the ground.
I didn't want to draw a bunch of money out of the theater to support my life.
Right.
So I worked this day job and then worked this night job, and then got rid of that, and I formed this other business that eventually is kind of running itself with crew, which makes me money.
Installing windows, is that what it is?
It's a window cleaning company. Which is better. Because there's so much more work. And
I installed windows. That work fucking sucks.
It's hard work, but I've got a good crew. So that's a stream of income coming in,
right.
And I get out and I labor and I make money doing that. So it just goes to show these venue owners for independent venues are not rich. I mean,
there's this idea of the venue owner just sitting there, the suits up in the office, just the Bill Grahams just up there smoking cigars and doing cocaine and taking all the money and shit like that.
Yeah,
but that's just not the case.
That's not true. I mean, we've all. The only people that don't have another job that work at the theater are a few of our head production guys, my general manager, because we need that to be his sole job, so he gets a salary enough to, and he's also a small part owner of the theater, partner, because he's done such a rad job. We've given him part of the business, which is well deserved.
Right.
And he does all the hard stuff that I don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
That I did for years. So I operate this day business, and I've got the theater at night. So it just goes to show that margin is so thin. There's so little left for salaries. For any much extra. We're not getting huge bonuses to do this.
Right.
So I'm able to live because I have got a couple hustles, and I play music and do some touring and local playing, making money playing music. So you put all those together, it equates to one decent living.
Real quick, a lot of the people that I've had coming on to the show, and I haven't really talked to anyone who's a venue owner and operator, especially an independent venue owner and operator on the show. What are your thoughts on the industry as it stands right now? Do you feel that the claims that the market has been oversaturated and fewer people are going to shows and there's not as much money in it? Like, do you think that claim is legitimate, or do you feel like people are still going to shows, like there's still money in the industry, that bands are still finding success in it, or what has been your experience from the venue side? Like, have you seen your bottom line decrease?
No, the people are still going to shows. I mean, AEG just built this phenomenal Mission Ballroom. They didn't do it.
So cool.
They didn't do it because Denver is not stepping up and going to shows. They did it because this is a hot market. There's a lot of people here. There's a lot of people going out to see shows. I don't know where these people are coming from, but they're here, and they're going to see all the shows. Every show at Red Rocks, which is almost every single day of the year, it seems, especially during the summer.
Right.
They sell out almost every single one of their shows. People are going to shows. They're selling out shows while I'm selling out a show, while the Bluebird's selling out a show, while the Mission's selling out a show, while the Fillmore might have a show.
So what are independent musicians doing wrong? Like, what are the biggest mistakes that you see independent bands making in the current market?
Or is it just us? You can say that.
Might just be you.
Yeah.
It's hard because it is hard to be a local independent musician, especially doing original music. Like you said, like Ruckus is my favorite band in Denver.
Thank you so much.
Always has been, but you know that because I've told you that 100 times.
By the way, I loved when you filled in for Logan.
Yeah, that was a
fucking riot. And we had Reed from Speedwolf on here, and we were talking about, like, you know, it was right after Parker left and Logan had the surgery, and Reed lives in New York, so all he saw was Instagram posts that are like us on stage without Parker and without Logan.
Yeah, this other dude.
And he hit up Logan. He's like, "What happened?"
He's like, "You all fired everybody."
Yeah, right.
People actually did this at the show were like, "Are you the new bass player?" No. Logan's got this.
I mean, it was a riot. It was a lot of fun. It was basically a Ruckus legendary Eskimo Brothers hybrid show.
Yeah, dude, it was super rad. It was another one of those gigs where it came so easy for me, and those songs, they ain't easy.
I was so impressed by how
Logan's
quickly
bass lines are. Like, I've always liked Logan. I've always thought he was a great player. I especially realized how good he was when you guys did that Maiden thing. But listening to those albums in preparation for that gig, I knew I had such little time that I was like, I don't got any time to chart. I know that.
Right.
Maybe I could make some really quick charts. And I also want to get up and play, and I want to have fun, and I want to be reading off charts. So when I was working or driving, you know, I was listening to those tunes, and like, really, I love the songs so much. They were, you know, I've filled in for bands, done sub jobs where I was like, this sucks. It was so hard to learn the music because I didn't like it, and it was even harder to chart it.
Teeth.
Because if I've charted, I gotta sit, pause, rewind, and I'm charting, and I'm like, this is not a good use of my time because I'm not having fun. But listening to that Ruckus stuff was what made me super stoked.
Thank you so much.
Playing on stage was great.
It was a riot. Playing with Tony and Ty is a fucking riot, dude.
You guys are as good as many of these, you know, harder bands that we have, and we do so many of these bands that I've never heard of that are selling 500, 600, 700, 800 tickets. I'm like, who are these guys? Where do they come from? I'm getting hip to them, and a lot of them I see them play live, and I'm stoked on them. I'm like, this is great, and I'm a new fan. A lot of them, I'm like, I totally don't get it.
Right. It came from SoundCloud.
Yeah, dude, totally. The SoundCloud bands. So back to the question. So what are the mistakes that you see independents making, and what are the things that you're seeing independents do that work?
I got to be honest, I don't know.
Don't know.
I wish I had an answer. I mean, a lot are playing too much.
Right.
Oversaturating the market, but I mean, maybe they're not. Maybe they. I mean, how are you going to get? How do you build fans?
Right. Open up for people for $100.
Maybe there's just so many great touring bands that come through Denver that any night of the week, like, we could get online or open up the Westward if we wanted to, the old-fashioned way, and see what's going on. I'm sure we could find something pretty cool to do tonight.
Right.
You know, Denver has grown and changed that much, and there's just so much.
There's a show every night of the week.
There's a show every night of the week, and like, I got to be honest, I haven't gone to check out a local band for a long time.
Do you think it's bands aren't putting enough into marketing themselves? They're not putting enough into promoting, or it's it's just an uphill battle based upon the fact that it's hard to be a local band.
I think it's just an uphill battle. I think a lot of these bands are putting out, videos or, doing video releases. They're doing what seems to be all the right things. They're putting money in and they're promoting hard, and they're just still not drawing enough.
We just did a record listening party at Bowman's on Friday night. It's one of the
How did that go?
It's one of the most successful things we've done.
That's really pushed it hard.
We
too.
sold a lot of records,
Awesome.
and we gave away a lot of free stuff. And I spun records, got to play DJ. It was fun. It was just a fun party atmosphere.
great.
And it was
That's a
more
great
interactive than a show, almost.
I do feel like we've talked about Facebook ads before and how shitty they were, but I think that they've gotten enough complaints that they're starting to dial it in.
Well, they've
what they
seen
do,
the people are organically just pushing because that's what you have to do.
Well, what they used to do is all I've wanted to do is I just want to access our followers, right? So I would create an ad and it would be like, your audience is too specific, it's too narrow, you won't reach as many people. But what they've changed is now they fill that in by automatically generating lookalike audiences.
Right.
So it's you go, I want to focus on people who have engaged with my page in this certain area. And they'll go, okay, here's all the people that have engaged with your people in this certain area, and here are other people like the people that have engaged with it. And we'll have to see with this run of shows we're doing coming up this weekend. By the way, 4 Ruckus shows this weekend. Thursday night in Thursday, March 5th, Surfside 7 in Fort Collins with Hail Satan and Hooked on Southern Speed.
Bitchin'.
Friday, March 6th in Colorado Springs with the fucking Nobodies.
Rad.
Awesome.
And, dude, the first song we learned as a band was a Nobody song.
That's amazing. Where are you playing at?
Triple Nickel in Colorado Springs. Okay. So that's going to be fun. And the Born Readies are on that too. And then Saturday, March 7th.
Goosetown with Fast Eddie.
Goosetown with Fast Eddie and the Trade-Ins.
Incredible.
And I'm doing a double header because I'm going to play with Reptiles and Samurai for a Purim Festival event. So like an early family, basically Jewish Mardi Gras.
That's a rock and roll weekend.
Dude, and then Sunday the 8th, we're doing, us and Granny Tweed are doing a daytime free all ages show at Chain Reaction Records.
So what are you guys doing right?
Unbelievable.
You're obviously doing something right.
This is the thing
people come into these shows.
That's the thing. We had a series of semi-disappointments when we did that Judah show at the Bluebird. It wasn't very well attended, especially for a band like Judah. Have you seen that band play before?
No, I don't even know who they are.
Dude, they are like the Italian Bay City Rollers mixed with Turbo Negro a little bit, just like that 4 on the floor, like bubblegum, fist pumping, rah rock and roll, super fun band. One of the most fun bands I've seen in a long time. So that added to it, but that didn't really do really well, and we
who did Judah not do well, or did you guys feel like you didn't?
Well, we played earlier, and it was a little bit of a higher ticket than probably our crowd would have liked to have paid, and there were a lot of people who showed up late to see Judah, and they were like, "Did you guys already play?" The typical thing, whatever. Yeah. But no, Judah didn't really get as many people out as one might have liked. But the last couple Lost Lake shows that we did, only drew 50, 60 people. And I was really, so we had kind of a streak of semi-defeats. And I love Lost Lake. And like I said, I love Tony Mason. He's fucking awesome. And I love the bands that we played with. And I was trying to figure out what it was where we were having trouble getting people out. And I don't know if it's just oversaturation or poor marketing on our part or the location. I thought that might be part of it. Just our crowd doesn't want to go there.
Yeah, they're not used to that place.
I don't know what it was. But so that's the thing is I've at least had the illusion, and I'm sure my own mental state has helped to alter my perceptions of that illusion, that our audience is diminished, or that our our likability has slipped in some way, or we've gone stale in some way. I don't know, but these upcoming shows that we're getting ready to do, it seems like we're starting to get some traction and we're starting to get some interest. But I've also I've seen very few bands locally really put their nose to the grindstone in the marketing department. And I'm not talking about our shows. I mean across the board.
No, you're right.
You know, you see your handful of like high dive bands seem to do a good job. You know, or maybe it's just high dive, or maybe it's just like the fact that the location is a great place to get people in there for music. I haven't been to a Three Kings show in a while, but I remember when I was at Three Kings, we did that Three Kings anniversary show and fucking packed the place out. You know, it was enormous. And I don't know, like, observations that I've made is that it's just harder to get people motivated to go out to see local music.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, I don't know.
We have to work our asses off to get the word out about shows, and we spend a lot of money on it.
Right. What have you guys been doing in terms of online marketing that's worked really well for you? What's performed best for you?
Well, we've got a marketing person.
Right.
We've someone, she just started with us recently, but we've had a couple in the last 3 years, and I mean, we spend anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a show on a national show.
Wow,
we spend real money on it.
I mean, you have to build it into the budget, you know.
Right. Yep, it's in the budget, and we spend it. A lot of venues have that $1,000 in the budget, and you know they're only spending $200, but still charging you that in the back end. I mean, I think we're really putting a good effort out. I think that our marketing person is so creative. She, of course, Facebook, Instagram, things like that, but not just Facebook. I mean, you'll see our ads pop up on YouTube, you know, as you're watching videos, or sometimes when you're on Facebook and you're watching videos between videos, you'll see our ads pop up. Sometimes you'll see them on, you know, like Fox 31 Denver news feed. You'll see our ads pop up. So she's finding really creative ways to put the word on the street. You know, we occasionally do radio when it's fitting, but not a whole lot. Obviously, we do Westward.
You guys bought an ad for Hell's Bells when you had Hell's Bells at the theater.
Right, we were doing for Hell's Bells. I always bought a radio ad because that seemed to work. We don't really do too many radio ads. It just doesn't seem to fit our demographic. Yeah, they're just finding really creative ways and spending real money on it, and it seems to be working. And of course, the Westward, which doesn't have as much of a foothold or doesn't have as much strength as it used to have. You used to really depend on the Westward.
Yeah, I knew the Westward was slipping when they gave me a full-page interview.
How do you like that, huh? I mean,
no, that was awesome. I'm joking, of course. Shout out to Oakland Childers. Thank you so much for the interview.
If it wasn't for weed ads and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Print's just hard, you know.
Print's hard. And Westward, we depended on Westward for many, many years. Now we utilize it and still like it and respect it. But
used to be
that's not where we're putting our money.
It used to be such a big deal to see your name in the Westward. I mean, it's still a big deal as a local musician. Still a huge deal. But like, I remember when I first started out, and you'd look at those show listings, and you'd see your show for
cut it out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I used to. I don't anymore. But you know, if we're like opening, you know, The Business and Brain Failure at the Bluebird Theater, and you see fourth year freshmen underneath that, I'd be like, and I'd cut that out and keep it. You know, that was such a huge deal.
Yeah. So I've had the theater now for 10 years. I've been there, and I remember, you know, years and years ago, if a band didn't get in the listing, we either ran out of room or we messed up. Bands would shed. I mean, they'd get so upset, freak out, and they would. And if they had a small draw, they would attribute their small draw to the fact that their name wasn't in the Westward. I'm like, yeah, all right, give me a break.
Right. Hey, Gordo, what are we at time-wise, man? I think we've been going forever.
We're rolling up on 3 hours here.
Okay, cool.
Got another hour?
Yeah, right. Dude, I mean, the truth is, Andy, I could talk to you all night, man. You've been a good friend of mine for a long time, and we never get to see each other because, you know, we don't really do much with White Fudge. March 14th,
yes.
Three Kings Tavern.
Josh Finley's birthday.
Yeah, Josh Finley's birthday with Arroya and the Dirty Femmes.
One of my other bands.
Yeah, so you're
That's
doing
going to be a badass show.
It's going to be a great show.
This was handpicked by Josh Finley his band, and then 2 that I happen to be in, but bands that he likes a lot.
Well, he respects the shit out of you.
Likewise.
Yeah, but I mean, man, it's. We don't get a lot of opportunities to sit down and shoot the shit like this, but anytime that we've been dealing with band business stuff, and you and I need to talk about something on the phone, we end up on the phone for a fucking half hour, man.
Yeah, I think that you and I see a lot of things eye to eye, and when we don't, we usually work it through pretty quick and we get stuff figured out. But I don't
think we've ever barked at each other or anything. I don't think we've ever had a fight.
I probably barked at you a few times. I don't know if
possibly
you really barked at me.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? If you have, I don't remember. It's obscured with nothing but pleasant memories. And
likewise.
And I love the shit out of you, man. Before we wrap up here, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. First and foremost, our most venerable venereal sponsor, Matula Plumbing.
Matula!
Shit rolls downhill. Don't be at the bottom. Your number 2 is our number 1 priority. Your shit is our bread and butter. Angie's List Super Service Award winner back in 2011. 1-1 is the only one that matters. He'll wear the booties for you. Jerry Matula, if you got poo-poo problems in the Chicago area, hit up my man Jerry.
Poo-poo platter.
TheNugNation.com. This podcast comes out of the Nug Nation studios at an undisclosed location in the Rhino District of Denver, Colorado. See the Nugs and all their wacky adventures through the town of Nugville. Man, check it out, TheNugNation.com. Mutiny Information Cafe. Hey, you're wearing your Mutiny hoodie. That's fucking awesome. This is a Mutiny transmission. Mutiny Information Cafe is everything. Books, records. No one has a larger selection of Torrini syrups. No one.
And it is the coolest bookstore in town, and probably that I've been to anywhere.
Yeah, live events, podcasts, pinball. They do everything. In fact, before we got on the air, Jim Norris hit me up about using Balls of Steel in a Mutiny ad. I assume it's going to be a pinball ad. So I sent him an unreleased studio version of Balls of Steel that we never put out, and they're going to use it for that ad. So shout out to Mutiny. Let's see, what else? Oh, Flipside Music on South Tacoma Street here in Denver. The largest selection of effects pedals in the region. Very cool place to buy and try out equipment, get your guitar repaired.
I got my guitar appraised there.
Did you really?
I had an appraisal.
Dude, I really hope that they keep growing, man, because it is a very cool place, and also, they have a YouTube channel where they do their What the Fac series, which is very cool.
What the FAQ?
Go down, check them out. Tell Ike the boys sent you. Let's see, Rocket Space Rehearsal Studios here in the Rhino District of Denver, Colorado. Hourly rehearsal spaces, fully equipped. We've rehearsed there a timer.
We have.
The 200. Man, just friendly staff, really great stuff, clean, nice, and affordable. And best part is it's Rocket Space, so you ain't got to carry shit. Evergroove Studio. Hey, we got Ethan Klein from Evergroove in the house. We're going to be, stay tuned.
What's up, guys?
Stay tuned for a whole lot of live stuff coming out of the studio this week as we work on the follow-up to the album we're getting ready to release that we recorded at Evergroove. We're getting ready to do close to 20 new songs out of there, and they're all really fucking cool. And we're pumped on it. So stay tuned for a bunch of content coming out of Evergroove this weekend. And go to evergroove.com and hit them up about your next project.
And Tony Lee's guitar tone is going to be so sweet.
Oh, it's going to be so sweet. I can't fucking wait. Thanks for loaning us that guitar, by the way. Tony just needs to bring a guitar out here and leave it here. It's like
Well, he has everywhere he lives, he has his walls are adorned with these guitars. There's just tons of them.
I know.
And I'm like, wait, really? You can't just, I don't know. It seems like he could have vacation guitars.
Dude,
people have timeshares, like timeshare guitar. Leave a couple here.
One of my amps is in the...
It is.
The warehouse.
It is
back
at the
there.
storage.
I just saw when I was coming in. I'm assuming, so I shouldn't take that tonight. I'm assuming that he's going to use that.
Is that the PV Bandit?
Yeah, it's a PV.
He likes it.
Oh, the PV Bandit.
It's
You're
actually
the owner of the PV Bandit?
It's not a Bandit. The Bandit's the little guy. It's the PV Renown. And that thing friggin' screams.
Dude, it screams in it. It's a workman's amp. It gets it fucking done, dude.
Yeah.
I mean... Here's
He
the
could
thing.
sound good through a fucking tin
Dude,
can.
Tony
It doesn't
is
matter.
like-
It's Tony Lee.
He's the best guitar player I know, and who gives zero fucks about gear, dude. He's like, we were getting ready to play with Blue Oyster Cult, and he was like ready to use my kid's ukulele for that fucking show, and I
Yeah,
like,
he'd make it sound good, though.
dude, last minute, I'm like, I can't. Gordo, do you remember what kind of guitar he was talking about using for that show? And I was just like, oh, he was going to use like his Gretsch hollow body for like a Blue Oyster Cult show.
That's not very. It's cool. It's not rock and roll.
And I'm just like,
yeah, he needs an SG.
well, and it hasn't had any work done on it in a while. You know, it's like, you mean your Brian Setzer guitar that's been sitting there collecting dust and hasn't been tuned up or had new strings put on it forever? I was
You're not the motherfucking Stray Cats.
It's true.
He does. So not a lot of people know this, but Tony loves Brian Setzer.
I know that.
Yeah, Tony.
Brian Setzer's unreal.
He's a fucking ripper.
He's incredible.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He shreds beyond.
So yeah, look forward to a bunch of stuff coming out of Evergroove here soon. Have I forgotten anyone besides the patrons?
I think you nailed them all.
All right, let's give a shout out real quick to the people who back us on patreon.com/MFRuckus. I'm really glad I'm starting to see that platform become a bit more popular. I'm seeing more and more people get on it. It's a really awesome way to support the artists that you love, and it makes it so that we can do the things we need to do to keep the ship afloat. We talked about ads earlier. I've taken a huge risk and put our Patreon budget just into marketing to help us get people out to the shows. You know, I wouldn't be able to take that risk if we didn't have the support of the people who back us on Patreon. Big shout out to some of the new people who have joined us, Max Sherman and Lisa Angel, who just jumped on this month. We fucking love you guys. If you want to get access to all the cool shit that we, all the exclusive content and early releases and whatnots and VIP parties with beer and food, go to patreon.com/MFRuckus. Become a patron at any level. Andy, again, thank you so much for coming and sitting down and talking with me.
It was fun, man.
Yeah, dude, I would love to have you back again because I feel like...
Yeah, we need to have a part 2 for sure.
For sure. I wanted to like I was thinking of all these stories, and I wanted to tell Gordo about the podcasting nightmare I had this fucking last night.
Which I still want to hear about.
Oh my fucking God, dude. Okay, I'll tell it real quick. So the dream, like, basically I woke up, and that, like, I usually get up with the kid and then take a nap. Sarah was nice enough to let me sleep in. So I, like, woke up, she gets up with the baby, and I went back to sleep. And, you know, your dreams when you are, like, just wait, like, when you do the little shorter naps, your dreams are a lot more vivid because it's a shorter sleep cycle and you actually remember them. And I had this dream that I was doing a podcast, and the subject was this guy, Johnny, from this band Warner Drive that we played with one time, like 100 fucking years ago. But it's one of those things where, like, the person in the dream is not the person that, like, they are in real life. And
It's
I'm
a
going
facsimile.
Right. And I'm going to this hotel, and it's the daytime, and we're gonna go up to his room, and Ethan's there, and we're gonna set up the podcast, and we're gonna set up all this nice equipment and all the microphones and the cameras.
Ethan was in your dream too?
Ethan Klein was in the dream, yeah. and we're all, like, trying to set it up, and then I called the guy Johnny in my dream first of all, and he goes, or no, I called him Anthony. For some reason, he goes, not Anthony, Tony. And he was a 50-year-old Italian guy, which Johnny from Warner Drive is not in real life. And it starts out real simple. We're sitting at the table, he and I are talking, and then little by little, it just gets more complicated, and more people start coming in, and then a party starts happening, and then for some reason Fonz is there, and then Ritz the rapper is there, and then the guy I'm supposed to be interviewing keeps getting more and more drunk, and he disappears, and he goes down to this giant banquet hall where a bunch of bros are all sitting around watching Scarface on a giant screen for some reason, and they're all getting wasted, and the podcast room is just getting filled up with more and more people, and Ethan and I keep, like, Ethan and Gordo and I just keep like trying to move mics and cameras around the room to like follow this guy who keeps going to other places, and like drunk girls are coming up and getting on the mic and talking into it. One girl gave me a pillow that had been filled with baby powder, and like for some reason she wanted to give it to me so I could like throw it at someone. So there's this like
dreams are weird.
Baby powder going everywhere. But the whole thing, the nightmare was it just kept getting more and more complicated and out of control.
And you're just trying to keep on top of it.
Dude, and Ethan through the whole dream is not saying a word. He's just like moving mic stands and just like readjusting mics and putting them in front of
like
people's...
the boom operator
Dude,
that's
seriously.
tortured and just
it's
like...
just going into one room after another. And the guy that I was originally supposed to be interviewing is long gone, dude. Anyway, and I like at a certain point I like realized I was dreaming and I had to jerk myself out of fucking sleep.
That does not sound very restful.
No, it was awful, dude. It was like the worst possible scenario for trying to do a podcast. Anyway, the podcast nightmare. It was hilarious to me at the time it was going on.
It's insane.
Andy, we have a tradition on the show, which is obviously, this isn't going to happen on the live stream, but when we do the audio version later on, we tag on to the end of every episode of One for the Homies shout out, which is where we give our guests the opportunity to give a shout out to a friend of theirs, maybe a local band or an independent band that they think deserves a little extra love, and just pick someone off the top of your head, and we'll throw a song on theirs on the end of the episode for people to listen to while they're searching for their next podcast to listen to.
I'm going to say Blind Staggers.
Blind Staggers. Dude, that new album is so fucking good. By the way, if you have not heard the Blind Staggers' new album, Doing All Right, Considering, you need to go on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you get podcasts.
Get on YouTube, see their new video.
Get on YouTube, see their new video that John Skibicki did on a fucking iPhone.
Yeah.
Seriously, that is unbelievable.
It is so good.
That album is incredible.
It is so fucking good, and
I wish I had the budget to put it out on vinyl. That's what I really want to do. That's the thing that I really want to do this year if I could.
Dude, if that album, with the marketing that they're putting into it, with how good the songs are on it, if that doesn't take them to the next level, there is no fucking justice in the world, dude.
I agree.
That is such a good goddamn record. In fact, I'd be tempted to put the entire new Blind Staggers album on the end of the podcast just because it's so fucking good.
That Grandma song?
Dude, Grandma is my favorite song on the album. Like, that song makes me cry every time I hear Laura sing it. It's amazing.
The performances are fucking unbelievable on it.
If the Blind
Staggers, great live, they're killer live. But there's a bunch of great players.
They just did a release show Saturday night. I
watched a bunch of live. Nene was posting live feeds, so I was watching it every chance I could.
Maritza, Dave, and Nene were all three posting at the same time.
So there was lots of options.
Yeah, man.
Decent audio, shitty audio, decent footage, but it was great.
Yeah,
the
it was so
performance
good.
was amazing.
And I sent a text message to all of them before the show, like a group text to everyone in the band, just letting them know I am, and I want to go on the record saying this live to the internet, whoever's watching. I am so fucking proud of you guys. That is the best album I've heard in a long time, man. And I'm glad you said it because I didn't even think about doing that, but man, that's a perfect One for the Homies shout out. So we're gonna give a One for the Homies shout out to the Blind Staggers out of Chicago, featuring our very own Tony Lee on guitar, and Damien and Shrek and Laura and Tiny. We fucking love you guys, and we're super proud of you. We'll throw a couple tracks on the end of the episode, so keep an eye out for that when we drop it later this week. In the meantime, again, come see us at one or all of the 4 shows we're doing in Colorado this weekend, and help us pay for our new record, which will be pretty good, but there's no way it'll be as good as that fucking Blind Staggers album. Anyway, thank you very much. This has been episode number 96. We're getting close to that triple digits, man. Rolling up fast. Thanks very much to our guest, Andy Bercaw. Dude, thank you so much. Bam. This has been the motherfucking podcast. I'm Aaron Howell.
I'm Gordo.
And we'll catch you next time, guys. Bye-bye.